Hey guys, welcome to Fanfic Fanatics. So in today's video we are gonna see what if Deku Izuku fell in love with Nejire Hado movie. Before starting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you are interested in MHA fanfictions. This story is Remember by Notchermiss3LF. Now without wasting any more time, let's dive in. Let's go guys. We don't need Deku anymore. Yeah, the boys replied with energy as they marched off, leaving behind a sad green-haired boy who was wet from head to toe. Guys, wait for me, he said in a tearful voice. He had just been abandoned by the people he had called his friends for so long, and it hit him hard. Was it all because he was quirkless? Why would they do this to him? Was it his fault he wasn't born with a quirk? It wasn't fair. Who needs them anyways? He said to himself, getting up and heading in a different direction. It wasn't a problem for him, as he knew these parts of the woods like the back of his hand. He easily navigated his way to a secret spot that he usually went to by himself to be alone. It was a small clearing next to a flowing spring. The sound of the water calmed him down, and he closed his eyes and just laid there, letting his mind drift to whatever thoughts were in his head. He didn't really settle on one concrete thought, rather just went through a myriad of them. His tranquility was broken when he heard footsteps in his direction, and he opened his eyes. It was coming from behind him. He turned to see a girl, about his age, or probably older than him. She seemed scared and worried. "Hello," he greeted. Hi. Are you lost too?" she asked, looking around. Izuku shook his head and got up. He figured that she got lost and was trying to find her way out of the forest. She was a bit taller than him when he stood next to her. "Are you lost?" he asked. The girl nodded in response. Izuku smiled a bit. "Don't worry. I know the way out. Follow me," he said. It was already getting a bit dark, and he should probably head home himself. The girl took his arm and followed him. "My name is Izuku Midoriya," he spoke up after a bit of walking. "I'm Nejire Hado," the girl said. It didn't take long for them to get to the edge of the forest, where they could see the lights of the park. A white-haired woman and a man with electric blue hair were moving around, and Izuku was a smart kid. Seeing her hair, he guessed that they were her parents. "Mom, Dad, Nejire's back," a boy exclaimed, pointing at the two children who made their way out of the tree line. The adults rushed over to her and examined her to see if she was okay. Izuku took this as his cue to leave, and was about doing so when the girl spoke up. "Sorry, I wandered too far. Luckily Izuku was there to help me. I would have been lost if it weren't for him." Both parents looked to see the boy who had frozen at the mention of his name. Izuku didn't do well with people, especially recently when he had just been diagnosed quirkless. He wanted to avoid them as much as he could. "Thank you very much, we are grateful to you, kid," the man said with a small bow. There's no need for that, sir. I just did what a hero would do," he said, losing his voice at the last part. "A hero? Is that what you want to become?" the woman asked. Izuku's eyes flickered with sadness for a split second, but he quickly hid it. "Yeah. I always wanted to be a hero when I grew up, but I'm not sure I can." The two of them looked at each other and thought the same thing. He was obviously not comfortable talking about this. It seemed something was wrong somewhere, so they decided to encourage him and drop the matter. "With what you did today, I'd say you already are one. You helped a stranger in need. That's what heroes do. So don't give up, work towards it and you'll be living your dream in no time," the man said with a small smile. "Really? You think I can?" Izuku asked, some hope in his voice. "Of course you can. It's getting rather late. Do you live around here? We can take you home. We can't have you walking around this late," the woman said. "I'm fine really. My house is just a few minutes away," Izuku said, not wanting to inconvenience them. "We insist. As thanks for helping Nejire today." "Oh, okay." Inko was worried, but Izuku finally came back and he looked a lot happier than when he stormed off earlier that day. Maybe he had gotten over his bad mood. "I'm back," he said, closing the door behind him. "Izuku, where have you been?" his mother asked. "Sorry, I was playing with some friends, and I got carried away," he explained. Inko sighed in relief that he was at least safe, and looked happier. Why wouldn't he be? He had just met people who believed in him, who believed he could be a hero. That was the push he needed. "Hey mom. Can I learn how to fight?" After that day, Izuku took to learning martial arts. and found out that he was very good at it, and a fast learner. At the age of 8 he was already a black belt in karate and taekwondo. He also made a new friend in the girl he had helped that day. Nejire visited the park often to play with him, up until when they were 9. She was moving away, and would not be able to see her friend again. It was sad, but there was nothing that could be done. "I'll miss you, Nejire," he said with a small smile. She looked the sadder of the two. Izuku was her first real friend, and because of him she had learnt to make friends with others. Up until she met him she was very stone-faced and almost never talked to kids her age. He helped her a lot to open up to people. "Izuku, can you promise me something?" she asked. "What is it?" "When we meet again. Let's be together forever, okay?" Nejire brought her pinky up to him, and waited for his answer. "It's a promise," he said, putting his own pinky finger up to hers. With that, she hugged him, and left, on her own path. Izuku did feel sad, but he wasn't going to cry. He just had to train hard enough, and become a hero. What a weird dream. Izuku woke up and laid flat for a while, thinking about the dream he just had. He was now 15, and today was yet another day at UA. The previous 3 days he had been on house arrest, after getting into a fight with Bakugo, his classmate. A lot had happened. He had met All Might almost a year ago, and he gained one for all. He never stopped his training, and was now a master in various martial art styles. That wasn't what was on his mind now. Who was that? Izuku had an accident a few years earlier that made him lose a few years' worth of memory. Though he was getting it back, but it was a slow process, and the memories came back in small flashes, just like this one. "Midoriya, you'll be late for school," Iida, his classmate, yelled from outside his dorm room. He quickly got up and had his bath, and took a good look at himself in the mirror. His body sported a few scars here and there, but he was, as they say, shredded, along with his usual training with all might and one for all further improved his already remarkable physique. He was making steady progress with the quirk, being able to use a solid 20% if he pushed it. It didn't seem like much, but when combined with his martial arts prowess, it was downright lethal. He opened the door and caught up to his friend on the way to school. "I apologize for my actions. I will control myself next time," he said, bowing in front of the class. "Don't sweat it, man. It wasn't your fault. Just don't do it again." Aizawa spoke up from behind the boy, making him jump. He quickly to his seat and waited for his teacher to begin with class. Aizawa cleared his throat. "Over the last 3 days that Midoriya hasn't been with us, we've been discussing about work studies, and you have yet to fully grasp the concept, so I invited some guests to better explain it to you. You guys can come in." 3 students who were obviously seniors entered the class and faced them. These are the highest-ranked students at UA, or the Big 3 Feet as they are popularly referred as. The tall blonde teen with a cartoonish appearance immediately cut in with a joke, but it flew right over the students' heads. He regained his composure and introduced himself. "I'm Mirio Tagata, and I'm Nejire Hado. This is Tamaki Imajiki." "Say hello, Imajiki," the girl in the middle said, turning to their 3rd classmate. The intensity in his eyes scared the entire class and left them frozen. Then suddenly he turned back to face the wall and whined. "I want to go home." Is this really UA's best? Was the collective thought of Class 1A. They really didn't seem like much on surface level. A bad comedian, an airhead, and a timid senpai. What a lineup. Izuku's thoughts were interrupted when the girl stopped in front of him and stared. It seemed that she had frozen. He raised an eyebrow. Was this part of their act or what? And why did she just stop in front of him like that? She had been relatively talkative to the others until now. Is something wrong?" he asked, waving in front of her face. "Izuku? Is that really you?" she asked in a small voice. Said boy tilted his head in confusion. How did she know who he was? Come to think of it. "Have I seen you somewhere before?" he asked. The girl's mood dropped. His question just confirmed her suspicions. She heard about the accident that he had, and that he had lost a good part of his memory, but never did it occur that he'd also forget about her. Or their promise. It's nothing. Never mind," she said, dropping the matter and walking back to the front of the class. Her mood was definitely dampened compared to when she had walked in a few minutes ago, but regardless they had a job to do here. Mirio ended up challenging the entire class to a fight, and funny enough, kicked their asses. The class then finally understood the importance of the work studies program, and the third years were free to go. I'll catch up with you guys. I have something to take care of, Nejire said, waving her two classmates. The two of them shared a look, shrugged and left. They didn't want to pry in her matter, seeing as it looked sensitive. Few things could change Nejire's demeanor, and if that first year was one of them, then it had to be personal. Izuku was with his friends, but then was called out by their blue-haired senpai. Izuku, can I talk to you for a sec? He nodded and told his classmates he'd catch up with them. They on the other hand were freaking out. Well, some of them. How did Izuku know that girl? Why were they on first-name basis? Midoriya. A familiar voice lamented in agony. Izuku followed his blue-haired senpai quietly, wondering what she could possibly want from him. From the way she addressed him, she had to have known him from somewhere. Problem was, he had no idea who she was, though she looked oddly familiar. She stopped when they were a good distance away from the other students and turned to face him. So, you really don't remember me, do you? Izuku looked at her for some seconds, shifting the bangs obscuring his eyes. She definitely looked familiar, or at least he felt like he knew her. He just didn't know how, or where, or who she was in all honesty. I'm sorry. I don't think I remember if I do know you, he said in an apologetic tone. The girl's already dampened mood became even more glum, but almost immediately she brightened up and smiled at him, though Izuku could tell that it wasn't genuine. Sorry for taking your time. That's all I wanted. I'll see you around. Why, yeah. See you around, senpai. Nejire watched the boy walk away, and her smile dropped to a neutral expression. He didn't remember, but it wasn't all lost. I'll make you remember, Izuku, I promise. The work studies had begun for the first-year students, which was far more hands-on than their internships. Izuku had faced a minor problem with his work study at first. Sir Night-Eye and him didn't exactly see eye to eye, especially as the man had a bias towards his own student Mirio. Izuku didn't really get why Night-Eye seemed not to like him. What did he ever do to the man? The bright side was that he'd just learn from him, and leave him be when the internships were done. It seemed that the man was working on something big, seeing as it was always his sidekicks that handled his matters for him. Mirio seemed to know about it, meaning Izuku was the only one in the dark about the issue. Not like he minded though. He was there because his senpai invited him, nothing more. Yo, Midoriya. Hello. Oh, sorry, what were you saying again? His classmates gave him a weird look and pointed at the clock on the wall. It's lunch break, man. Let's go eat before it's over. I'll be right behind you, he said, getting up after them. A lot of things were passing through his mind as he sat down with his tray. There was the Night-Eye incident, there was his training with One for All, and then oddly, there was the case of that third-year girl. What was her name again? He couldn't remember. A small commotion brought him out of his stupor. Everyone around him was murmuring to themselves, and he couldn't quite make out what they were saying. A hand, or a finger, poked him on the cheek, making him to look at said hand. The girl beamed at him and plopped down next to him. He almost immediately shrunk at the sudden attention he was getting, not only from said girl, but from everyone else. Hey there, senpai, he greeted in a small voice. Hey Izuku. How've you been? He furrowed his brows at the use of his first name. The first time she did it he assumed she had mistaken that as his last name, but it was now clear that she knew what she was doing. I'm doing well. I guess. What about you? Nejire began to go on and on about her day, and even the days before. Izuku didn't really mind, as she had her voice low enough not to attract attention from others. Not like her sitting next to a first year didn't already do so. She must have noticed that he was quiet, or maybe staring at her, so she stopped talking and looked away shyly. What? No, I just prefer listening to people talk. I'm not really good with words, Izuku replied, picking out a piece of fish from his plate. Nejire suddenly grabbed his hand and ate it. She squealed in delight. It's so good. I wish I had this. What did you just do? Izuku asked with a red face and looking around, hoping no one saw that. They did. Nejire smiled and leaned over with her own chopsticks. I'll return the favor. Say ah. Izuku shrunk even further. This was embarrassing. Is this really necessary? He asked. Just open your mouth. Nejire snapped back in a playful tone. He sighed and did so, and chewed on what she had put inside. What even was going on right now? His thoughts that no one had seen them were blown out the door when he felt the murderous intent of some of his classmates. Was he in some kind of anime or what? Well, technically, that wasn't the topic here. Hey, you got some rice on your face, she said, leaning towards him and picking it. This was the final straw for Izuku. He couldn't contain his panic attack. Ah. I think that's enough, Nejire. You've terrorized the poor guy for long enough. Another girl said, grabbing her friend by the back of her shirt and dragging her away. Of course, Nejire protested. So, mind explaining this to us, Midoriya? Kaminari asked, planting his hand into Izuku's shoulder. Yeah, 'cause it was getting kinda sweet back there, Mineta added. Guys, I don't know. I'm just as confused as you are, he said, looking down with a blush. Both of them looked at each other and decided they would let him off the hook, for now. He didn't seem to have an explanation for what they just witnessed. They were still jealous though. On the other side, Yu, let me go already, Nejire yelled. Her friend finally did so and let her stand up. Nejire dusted herself down and looked back to her friend with a pout. So mind explaining why you're all up in that guy's personal space? He didn't mind though, did he? Nejire countered. Of course he did, was probably too polite to tell you that he did. I get that you like him and all, but try to not get carried away. Yu. What made you think that? Yu facepalmed at her friend's question. Was she really that oblivious? It's as clear as day. You're not the most subtle person around, you know. Ever since you met him it's been, Izuku this, Izuku that. Nejire's face turned red in realization. In truth, she never really noticed the other people at Izuku's table, who were most likely his friends, and they saw everything. Her face reddened even more, this time in embarrassment. She had gotten completely carried away. Her friend exhaled and patted her on the shoulder. Listen, I know you like the guy and all, but you might want to chill out around him, or you'll end up scaring him off, K. Nejire nodded meekly. K, I'll try to give him space then. The bell for end of lunch break rang through the halls, and both of them headed back to their own classes. Nejire did take one last glance towards the green-haired boy. As usual, his eyes were obscured by his long drooping hair. It had always been that way. She smiled to herself. He didn't cut it after all. Hey Izuku, watch this. Crackle. Whoa. That's so cool. Your quirk's awesome, Nejire. I know, right? I can't wait to be a hero. I'll learn to fly. I'll be all whoosh. SWOOSH. FWOOSH. Nejire said, her eyes beaming with excitement. Izuku at that moment felt a small pang in his kid's heart. She was happy for his friend, no doubt, but then again, it just reminded him of how shitty his luck was. He got the short end of the stick for sure. Well, now it didn't matter, he wouldn't let it get him down. Nejire believed in him, and that was enough to drive him forward. He would become a hero, no matter what. Hey Izuku. Hello? Said girl waved her hands in front of his face, breaking him out of his thoughts. Oh, sorry, I spaced out, didn't I? He asked, scratching the back of his head. Nejire huffed and pouted. Izuku should pay more attention to his friend, or she'll feel sad. Yeah, I hear you, Nejire. I'm sorry. You're forgiven. Now let's go, she said, skipping away. Izuku had to enter a light jog to catch up to her. They were walking through the trees into the forest. The very one they had met in. By now Nejire was accustomed to the lay of the land and had no problems finding her way. The spring, duh. I want to see those cute little fish, and the froggies, she said excitedly. Oi! What are you doing here, Deku? A harsh voice asked. Izuku's obscured eyes widened, as he turned to see Bakugo and his two friends. Well, now they had a new member with them. So he was replaced, huh? We were just walking. We aren't in your way or anything, Izuku explained. A bit of fear in his voice was evident. Nejire cocked her head to the side as she looked at the boys. They seemed to know Izuku, but it was obvious that they weren't friends. Bakugo finally took notice of the girl holding his hand and smirked. Ha! So the loser got himself a girlfriend, that's funny. Yeah, totally hilarious, one agreed with a snicker. It's not like that, Kachin, Izuku replied. I don't care anyways, she'll find out just like we did that you're a burden anyways. You'll always be a nobody, a useless, quirkless Deku. Let's go, guys, Bakugo exclaimed, leading his followers away. Izuku subconsciously let go of the girl's hand and sat down on the grass there, This was it. Bakugo just drove away his only friend. Nejire never knew of his quirklessness, and now hearing it, he guessed that she would want nothing to do with him. Maybe she'd even join Bakugo's group. It was all too much for the boy to contain inside, and as a result he shed a few tears. Nejire on the other hand was surprised. Now she knew why Izuku never mentioned his quirk, why he seemed to get sad when she talked about a new trick she learned with her quirk, why he said he could never be a hero. He was quirkless. I'm sorry for lying to you all this time. I just didn't want you to hate me. Though I understand if you want nothing to do with me now, he said in between sniffles. Nejire knelt down in front of him and did the only thing she could do at the moment. Wrap him in the biggest hug she could. Her mom always hugged her when she was feeling down. Maybe it would help Izuku feel better. What are you doing? He asked in surprise. Mom always hugs me when I'm feeling sad. Hugs make you feel better, so is Izuku feeling better now? The boy nodded and just remained like that. Nejire smiled at him reassuringly. I don't hate Izuku, I never could. Izuku's my first friend, and I'm not leaving him over something as dumb as being quirkless, she said, patting the boy on the head. Another wave of tears flooded out, this time out of relief, of happiness. He wasn't going to be alone anymore. Nejire then asked him a question. I heard you call that mean kid, Kachin. Why is it? It doesn't seem like you're friends. Izuku brought his head down and exhaled. Well, he and I used to be best friends, but then he got his quirk. It was amazing, and when I found out that I was quirkless he turned on me. He started making fun of me and calling me a deku. Actually, the day I met you, he kicked me out of his group. They said that they didn't want me following them around anymore. Nejire listened with pity and slight anger for the blonde kid. Well then stop calling him Kachin, he's a bully, not your friend. Also, why don't I get a special name? She asked playfully, pinching him on the cheek. Izuku chuckled despite the mood he was in. He was beginning to feel better after all. I can't think of one on the spot. How about Nejire-chan? It can be our own thing, she suggested. Oh okay then, Nejire-chan. Izuku repeated. She seemed to like the sound of it, and began to say it over and over again. Izuku gave me a cute name. I know, I'll use it as my hero name, she said, turning to him with a grin. Really? Why? Izuku asked, genuinely confused. There were literally hundreds of better or cooler names they could come up with. Nejire, however, seemed content with it and nodded vigorously. Yeah, it's special because Izuku gave it to me. Izuku was taken aback, but his heart felt warm at the kind gesture. She took his hand again. I don't care what other people say about being quirkless, it doesn't mean you can't try. Just know that I'm on your side, Izuku, and I'll always be. Nejire's got you. Beast. 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 Alarms were quite annoying, especially when you were in the middle of a great dream. One ear-piercing moment and you're whisked away from your fluffy dreams back to the gray area that was reality. Izuku's hand felt around his table, guided by the sound of the annoying noise till he found the snooze button. Finally the room was silent again. His body was aching. He had gone a bit overboard with his training the day before. Luckily today was a Friday, which was basically a half day. Honestly, he looked forward to the weekend more than he usually did. What was that dream though? He asked himself as he stared at the ceiling. Again, that same girl. This was the fourth time he had dreamt about her this week. Surely that had to be telling him something, but then again, it could just be a dream. After all, he had quite an encounter with a blue-haired girl this very week. Maybe he had blue on his brain or something. I better get up before I'm late. He got up and took his towel to have a shower. As the hot water poured on his aching muscles, he sighed in relief. It felt so soothing that he could fall asleep right there in the shower. Probably a bad idea though. Or was it? When he got out, he stopped in front of the full-size mirror that each student had in their rooms. He had to say, he never really looked at himself in the mirror before. Izuku was actually a lot bigger than he looked in his uniform, which his reflection showed. His years of martial arts training had given him a lean, but at the same time muscular frame. The one thing that never changed was his hairstyle. Ever since he could remember, his hair was always obscuring his eyes. They were visible, but only if you looked from up close. Not many had actually seen his full face before, not that he had something to hide anyways. He slipped into his uniform and again looked at his hair. Should he perhaps cut it? Maybe get a new look? For some reason, he didn't want to. He just didn't want to. I like Izuku's hair the way it is. I hope he never changes it. Again that voice. Who was that? Whoever it was, had an influence on him. He had a wild thought for a second and thought that he was actually living with a ghost. What a story that'd be. Knock knock. Midoriya, are you in? We'll be late for class, a voice said from the door. Oh, I'm coming, he replied in a panic, quickly stuffing what he needed into his school bag and rushing out the door. The person who was knocking was his friend, and class representative Tenya Iida. He took notice that Izuku had been acting strange over the last week, but didn't want to pry into what could possibly be a very private matter. Sorry, I got lost in thought. It's fine Midoriya, at least we will beat sensei to the class, the slightly taller boy replied, pushing up his glasses. They got to the class. Barely seconds after they had taken their seats, Aizawa walked in. As usual, he seemed tired and pissed more than usual. The chatter in the class died down immediately. The last thing they wanted was to somehow annoy him. Let's begin with our main topic for today. Your work studies progress, he started, and looked around to each of his students, as if sizing them up. He cleared his throat and continued. Seeing as you already have 2 weeks worth of experience from this, I would like you all to write a detailed essay on your work study. As you know, I'm very thorough, and I'll be checking in with your supervising hero to check the accuracy of your essays. Mind you, this will cover a big part of your final written exam for the year. Think of it as a little gift from me. If you do well on this, you won't have to read as much when your exam rolls in. Aw sweet. Thanks Mr. Aizawa, Kirishima exclaimed. The man's eyes flared red, scaring the boy back down into his seat. Aizawa pinched the bridge of his nose. That is really all I wanted to say to you. You are free to head over to your work studies. Head straight there, and don't screw around, he warned. Izuku got up quietly and slung his bag over his shoulder. Another day with Night Eye. Great. He respected the hero for his good work, but the man really needed to chill. Mirio did say he was a pretty nice guy, but so far all he had seen from the man was indifference or annoyance. He parted ways with his friends and headed towards Night Eye's agency. A train of thoughts ran through his mind as the actual train sped off. It was relaxing being alone by himself. He liked his classmates, but a change of atmosphere was nice once in a while. Night Eye's agency was many things, and weird was definitely one of them. Izuku stumbled into what he could only describe as something from a porno. Bubble Girl tied up on a table, and Sir Night Eye with a feather gun. He really didn't know what the hell that was. What in the name of BDSM is this? He asked with wide eyes. Now even Night Eye, the usually stoic man, had a look of embarrassment being caught doing something like this. Anyone would think the same thing. It was weird, pretty freaking weird. Bubble Girl yelped and tried to hide her face, unsuccessfully might he add. This isn't what it looks like, Night Eye said after a few moments of awkward silence. I wasn't thinking anything, sir, Izuku lied. He just wanted to drop the matter and forget what his eyes had just seen. Night Eye picked up that the boy just wanted to move on from that and was thankful he wouldn't have to give an explanation. Mirio came into the room, taking the attention and changing the topic. Hey Midoriya. Let's go on a patrol. Sure. As they left, Night Eye and Bubble Girl looked at each other, and then surprisingly burst into laughter. The boy's reaction was absolutely hilarious. It's nice to walk around like this. Makes me think I'm actually a hero, Izuku said as they were now on the open street. Civilians waved at them, and he was happy at the little interactions. Mirio was the more vocal one, and he just observed how he interacted with people. They were about to turn a corner when a small girl ran into Izuku and fell down. He immediately attended to her, and paused seeing the bandages all over her hands and legs. What happened to you? He asked in a soft voice. The girl just clung to him like a life jacket and held him right. She was shivering. Obviously something terrible must have happened to her. Another voice spoke up as a man with a mask walked out from the darkness of the alley. Eri, you know it's not safe to run off on your own. It could lead to accidents. Both Izuku and Mirio's eyes widened, as the same thought flashed through their heads. Overhaul. Sure you stamp each and every. Don't forget to. Are you listening? Oh. What? Where am I? I'm not surprised you spaced out again. You've been doing that often lately. Is there perhaps a reason why? Nejire sighed and looked to her teacher who had taken a seat across from her. The pro-hero Ryukyu was many things to Nejire, a friend, a teacher, and a big sister. She could tell her anything, and right now she really needed someone to talk to. Well yeah, she answered, mindlessly tapping her pen on the desk. Ryukyu chuckled, knowing that she would have to ask to get her answers out of the girl. She liked being indulged. So what exactly happened? Ryukyu was expecting something along the lines of, oh my favorite show got cancelled, or maybe even, I forgot to read for a test, but what she said made the dragon hero to enter a coughing fit. I think I'm in love. Huh? You, love? Since when? Ryukyu asked all at once. This certainly wasn't something she was expecting from the bubbly teen. Nejire's face turned a shade of red that she had never seen and she gasped. She wasn't kidding. It's kinda embarrassing and sad. A long time ago I met this boy. I visited the park with my parents, and I wandered off too far and ended up getting lost. I was almost about to cry because it was getting dark, then I saw him. He helped me to get back to my parents, and from then we became best friends. Nejire, despite her current state, made sure to leave out the part that Izuku was quirkless. She just didn't want to say it, though it's not like Ryukyu would judge. He was my first friend, and he was the one who made me the way I am. At first I was pretty withdrawn, and I didn't speak much, but he drew out this side of me that I never thought I had. When I was 9 I had to move away. It was sad, but I knew that wasn't the end of it. We made a promise, that when he found each other again, we'd never let go again. And I did end up meeting him at UA. It was quite a shock, she said. Isn't that a good thing? Ryukyu asked, hearing the sadness in her voice. It is. I'm glad I got to see him again, but the sad part is, he doesn't remember any of it. He had an accident and lost his memories, so I'm basically now a stranger to him, she finished. Ryukyu now got the full picture. It was indeed quite a sad story, one worthy of its own TV series. That thought was uncalled for. What do you plan on doing now? She asked the girl. I did try to talk to him, to see if he'd remember anything, but so far all I've done is make him wary of me. Nejire replied in a dejected tone. Ryukyu had never seen her student like this before. Nejire was a bright ball of sunshine, and she wanted to keep it that way. How about, instead of trying to jog his memory, you just make him fall for you all over again? I'm not really experienced in stuff like this, but I believe that if you two are meant to be together, he'll come to feel the same way about you, regardless of whether he remembers you or not. It was as if a switch went off in the girl's head. She sprung up from her seat with a burst of energy. That's it. Ryukyu chuckled at her sudden change in demeanor. You're right, Ryukyu-sensei. Instead of trying to make him remember me, I'll just have to make him fall in love with me. And with that, one Nejire Hado embarked on a mission, to win over the boys she loved. Hey Midoriya, you look down. Did something happen? Not really. I'm not feeling too well, that's all. It was a lie. Izuku was feeling terrible for something he had been forced to do a few days ago. He could remember the fear he felt from the little girl, and how she was trembling, asking for help, but what did he do? He let her go back to overhaul. While Sir Night-Eye had spoken to him and reassured him that he made the right call at that moment, he couldn't help but feel bad, especially after finding out what she was being put through at the hands of Overhaul. It was cruel, evil, and disgusting to think about, and the worst part was that he had to keep this all under wraps. He and the other students involved were sworn to secrecy about the matter, as the hero body didn't want something as big as a raid plan get leaked out into the public. Who knew who was on the side of the villains? Mirio faced the same dilemma, also feeling guilty for letting the girl go, and steeled his resolve to rescue her, no matter what. You should go to the nurse's office, Uraraka suggested. Izuku shook his head, waving it off. It's more of I'm beat up from the work studies, not that I'm actually sick, he explained. Oh, that makes sense. I haven't really done much in my work study though, but at least it's better than the internships. They all agreed on that. As mundane as their work studies could afford to be, they were miles better than the internships where they basically did nothing. Not even as much as a patrol. Well, in some cases at least. Izuku's phone buzzed, breaking away his attention from his friends. It was All Might. All Might. Meet me in my office whenever you're free. Izuku sent a quick reply and put his phone back in his pocket. He probably had an idea on why All Might wanted to see him. Lately he had been having some weird dreams regarding One for All. The first time he had seen something like that was at the sports festival when he was almost eliminated by Shinso. Those apparitions, at first they weren't clear, but he could now see them, and one that looked exactly like All Might. With that he downed his meal and excused himself to see his teacher. What exactly was going on with One for All? All Might never mentioned anything about weird dreams. He knew they were the past users of the quirk, but why was he having dreams about them? And about All for One as well? Knock knock. Come in. Izuku slid the door open and entered the room, sliding it shut behind him. He took a seat across his teacher. Sorry for calling you all of a sudden, young Midoriya, but what is on my mind was too pressing to ignore, the man began. Izuku was quick to wave off the apology. He didn't mind. All Might continued. Regarding your dreams about One for All, and the past users, I believe that the quirk is evolving, All Might said. Izuku quirked his brow. Evolving? Is that even possible with a quirk like One for All? He asked in surprise. One for All wasn't a quirk that he thought could evolve. It was far too powerful for him to even comprehend the thought that it would also grow stronger. Well, it is a quirk at the end of the day, and just like others, it in theory should evolve when pushed to a certain extent. And also remember when I said that One for All grows stronger as it's passed down. I think this is a sign, young Midoriya. A sign. Izuku repeated. All Might nodded and smiled a bit. In all my years of using the quirk, I could never interact with it in any way. I always had that feeling, but this confirms it. You, young Midoriya, are the one that will complete One for All, and defeat All for One once and for all. I've completely lost track of the number of times you said, One, and All, Izuku joked. They both had a small laugh at his joke, but then he spoke again with a slightly more serious voice. So the people, vestiges, All Might corrected. Yeah, vestiges. So what do you make of it? Could it be that One for All keeps the souls of its past users in some sort of limbo? Like a soul reaper? Izuku asked. Not soul reaper, young Midoriya, it's more like, their wills are passed down with the quirk, and with how strong One for All is, I'd say that over time their wills took on more and more of their personalities. Wait, I guess it is like a soul reaper then. Huh, so do you think I'll be able to talk to them? Izuku asked again. I'm not sure, but for the meantime, just put that on the side. You have your work studies to worry about, and your training with One for All. Gran Torino won't like it if you slack off, All Might said with a slight shudder. Izuku didn't share the same fear towards Gran Torino as he did, and it was mostly down to the fact that Izuku was a far better fighter than All Might ever was, and he got the idea of full cowling very early on in his training. He was happy, and in his mind, Izuku had already surpassed him, though he may need to work on his confidence issues. That was something that never really changed in the boy. I also heard about what happened at Night Eye's agency. It may not be pleasant, but you made the right call. You just have to work hard to save that girl. Yeah. I'll do my best. Yo Mirio, Tamaki, you ready to go? Nejire asked, coming round from the corner. Why yeah, but honestly I don't want to go, Tamaki said with a glum aura. Yeah. Let's go. They were both taken aback by the tone of Mirio's voice. His eyes were hard and he had a serious aura around him. He walked out the door, leaving the two of them to look at each other, wondering what could make the usually bright and cheerful Mirio all serious. On the other hand, Izuku had the same demeanor. Today he would save that girl, no matter what Overhaul threw at him, and the bastard would be put where he belonged. He was with Kirishima, Uraraka and Tsuyu, whose supervising heroes were also taking part in the raid. They too were thrown off by his seriousness. The last time they saw him like this was when he had fought with Bakugo, and it didn't end well for the blonde. Hey, Tamaki-senpai, over here, Kirishima yelled but was tongue-slapped by Sue. Shut up. No one's supposed to know we're out here, she chided. Oh yeah. Sorry about that, the redhead said with a small laugh. Midoriya, you ready? Mirio asked, putting his fist out. Yeah. Let's go kick ass, the green-haired boy answered, bumping his fist. Izuku didn't usually speak like that, so something had to be up with him. Hey Izuku, you look super serious today, anything the matter? Nejire asked, pulling him aside. It's nothing. I'm just feeling a bit nervous, he lied. She flicked him on the forehead and pouted. I know when you're lying, Izuku, but I won't ask since it's something you'd rather keep to yourself. Nejire may seem like an airhead, but she certainly wasn't dumb. Whatever was going on was probably the same thing that was bothering Mirio. Maybe they had secret info that the rest of them didn't. Izuku lied, but she smiled and took the opportunity, wrapping him in a big warm hug. He tensed at first, but just let it happen. What's going on? Why'd I always let her do stuff like this? Izuku had no idea why his guard was always down around Nejire. I mean, sure, she was friendly and had a way with people, but it's like his body was on autopilot whenever she was around him. He would only give a small protest, then just let her do whatever she wanted. The hug was nice though. Nejire let him go, but still held onto his arm. Again, no protests, as she didn't let go till it was time to leave. They were heading towards different parts of the Yakuza base, so they had to split up. Nejire pushed his hair up, revealing his face, and pinched his cheeks. You be careful now, okay? Good luck out there. She let the bangs fall back down and skipped off with her two juniors. Kirishima and Tamaki went in their own direction, leaving only Mirio and Izuku. Let's get going too. Boom, doors down, everyone move in. Shit. It's the heroes. Don't let them through. We can't let them get to the boss. The raid had begun, and the unsuspecting Yakuza had been ambushed by the heroes. At the forefront was Sir Night-Eye with his sidekicks. They had taken out the first group of thugs at the doorway and were leading a team of heroes towards the inner parts of the base. What's happening? We're being split up. Crap, Red Riot, Sun Eater. Night-Eye punched the wall in anger. The hallway had begun to warp and reshape, the effect of someone's quirk. The path in front of them closed off, blocking them from moving forward. He looked to his side to Izuku, who nodded at the go-ahead. One for all, 35% smash. Izuku kicked down the wall, blocking them, breaking through it and opening a way for them to move. Lemillion, you go ahead of us. We'll catch up to you. Midoriya, you'll keep breaking down these damned walls, Night-Eye ordered. Mirio nodded and ran ahead of the team, with them following behind Izuku, whose job was to create a path for them. As he kicked down the third wall, they spotted some members of the League of Villains. What were they doing here? Just keep moving forward. If they're not getting in our way, then we ignore them. The girl is priority. While they were making their way forward, Mirio had gotten to Overhaul and had confronted him. The villain's quirk was on full display as he reshaped the ground and controlled the protruding spikes in an attempt to skewer the meddling hero in his path. Die already. Mirio phased through the spikes, jumped into the ground and disappeared, resurfacing behind the villain and delivering a devastating punch right in his liver. Power. Overhaul was hit with a 1-2 combo immediately after and roared in rage, sending stone spikes everywhere, but again Mirio evaded by phasing through the attacks. Overhaul was getting pummeled by Mirio, who had intercepted him when he was about to leave with the girl. She was at a safe distance away from the fight, watching with worry as the blonde hero fought to protect her. I've had enough of this fuckery, Overhaul screamed after getting hit over and over again. Another of his henchmen, who had previously been taken out by Mirio, had recovered, and threw a gun towards his boss. Overhaul caught it and began to laugh. Let's see what you do now, hero. Bang! The little girl winced as he heard the loud sound, and she knew very well what that sound was. She closed her eyes in fear, but felt nothing after a few seconds. A shadow loomed over her, the shadow of the hero who had chosen to put her life over his. I'm not letting anything happen to you, okay? I'll save you, he said with determination. Overhaul smirked. You just sacrificed your quirk for her? You see, Eri? Because of you this man lost his quirk. He can't be a hero anymore, and he'll die, because of you. Mirio braced himself for impact, covering the girl as the stone spikes stabbed into him from different sides. He groaned in pain and coughed out blood. Let her go and I'll spare your life, it's that simple. Mirio, despite the pain, gave him a hard glare, full with determination. I'd rather die. Then so be it. Overhaul placed his hand on the ground to crush the hero, but then... SMASHH. The entire wall got kicked down by a very pissed-looking Izuku, who looked even more enraged at the sight of his senior's state. Overhaul. Ah, another one of you cockroaches, you guys don't ever go away. Another wave of spikes rushed at Izuku, who maneuvered through them and closed the distance between them. Overhaul smirked, about to grab Izuku, but the boy dodged in midair and spun round his hand, landing a hard roundhouse kick to the side of the villain's head. he got sent flying back, skidding across the hard floor. Izuku didn't let up. All the rage and frustration that he felt would be let out on Overhaul. He blitzed towards the dazed villain and landed another gut punch, which sent him to his knees, and then kneed him in the face, before using his arm and slamming him down into the floor. "Watch out, Midoriya!" Mirio yelled, just in time as Izuku jumped clear of a quirk-destroying bullet, quickly taking out the thug. That was all a distraction though, as Overhaul's cronies managed to get to him, fusing into a large mutated version of himself. "You're gonna pay for breaking my nose. I'm gonna be breaking more than your nose, Overhaul." The villain in his new form rushed at Izuku, who dodged but just barely. The speed that he came at was insane. Overhaul smashed into the wall, and rearranged himself, giving himself movable limbs. It was a grotesque sight to behold. The villain roared and slammed all four of his hands down into the ground. Everywhere erupted in stone spikes that flew towards their intended target Izuku, who broke through, and evaded them. One did catch him, grazing him across his side. He blitzed behind Overhaul again and hit him right in the kidneys, before punching him to the other side of the room. "You heroes are always getting in the way. Well then, if I can't have Eri, then no one does." Mirio had grabbed the girl and made their way out of the danger area. Sir Night-Eye had arrived on the scene and was helping Izuku fight Overhaul. It all went south, as Overhaul's endless barrage of attacks did damage to both Night-Eye and Izuku. Though the former got the worse of it, being impaled in the stomach. Sir, SMASHH, Overhaul got sent flying back as a devastating hit landed clean on his jaw, breaking it completely. Izuku's arms were now red, broken and swollen. He had overused One for All, and the fight had completely destroyed the Yakuza base, leaving them wide open for the world to see. It was a bad situation. There was no backup. Mirio and Night-Eye were out of commission, and Izuku was at his limit. Worse was that Overhaul kept on regenerating when he got injured. The villain further destroyed the landscape, reshaping it and separating everyone. Mirio tried to reach out to Eri, but it was too late. "Midoriya! Save her!" he yelled in desperation. Izuku turned and his eyes widened in horror. She was falling. He kicked Overhaul back and dove after her. Problem was, how would he get out of this situation? He had managed to catch the girl, but they were now free falling, with Overhaul in hot pursuit. "It's over for you, hero. How'd I get out of this? Come on, One for All." His free fall was suddenly cut short, as he stopped right in the air. His eyes widened as he saw that he was hovering above the ground. "You've gotten yourself into quite a pickle there, kiddo." Izuku's eyes widened in shock. The face, the hair, wasn't she? "I've seen you before. How are you here?" The woman who was floating next to him flashed him a bright smile. Her long black hair flowing in the wind along with her cape. If he wasn't mistaken, she was All Might's master. "Doesn't matter. It's nice to finally meet you, Ninth. Who I am doesn't matter right now. You kinda summoned me out of desperation. We'll talk again, and sooner than you think. And you might want to hold the girl tight. You're in for quite a ride." Izuku looked at the semi-transparent woman who had now vanished and then back at the ground. He and Eri had landed softly. He immediately examined her to see if she was okay. Thankfully she was. Overhaul was being held back by other heroes who had rushed to the scene to help. "Are you okay?" the girl asked, seeing that he was clearly very injured. Izuku smiled at her reassuringly and pat her on the head, ruffling her hair a bit. "I'm fine, Eri. Don't worry, I won't let that monster touch you again, so can you trust me?" The girl meekly nodded in response. "Why yeah. Oh man. What happened to Midoriya?" Mirio asked in a panic. It had been a few minutes since he disappeared with Eri, and they really could use the firepower right about now. "Relax, Mirio. He'll be here. I guarantee that," Night-Eye replied, coughing out blood. "Sir, please, don't strain yourself. You're injured." Overhaul had blown away some heroes and rushed at those on the ground, but was blasted back by a huge wave of energy. "Nejire-chan. Hey Lemillion. Where's Izuku?" the girl asked from above. "Watch out." She evaded the villain's attacks and clicked her tongue in annoyance. "Guess I'll ask later." She refocused on the villain, sending him back with enough force to rip off his limbs, but he grew them back instantly. They were fighting a losing battle. Despite his regeneration slowing down drastically, he was still very much in the fight because of it. He glared at the girl, who didn't show any signs of fear whatsoever, rather an annoyed look on her face. I used up too much energy earlier on. I only have a few more full power blasts, just have to make M count. You're quite annoying, you know. I'd hate to rip your pretty little face apart. Too bad for you. I'm spoken for already, she replied, dodging another wave of debris launched at her. Their clash was stopped midway by a huge gust of wind that separated them and blew Overhaul back. The violent green sparks of lightning flared up once again, and Izuku was back in the fight, but everyone's eyes widened in shock, not only at the fact that Eri was now tied on his back, but that he was now in the air. Izuku. You're flying. Leave Overhaul to me. Please get yourself to safety, he said to Nejire in a flat tone. He wasn't up for any negotiations. You're gonna fight with a kid on your back? That's the plan. You ready, Eri? I'll need your help for this, and remember, your power is not a curse. The girl's grip on him tightened, a sign that she had made up her mind. Izuku reassured them that they would both be fine, and his aura erupted, his hair spiking up, and for a brief moment bright red lines could be seen all over his body. One for all. 100% full cowling. Overhaul flew at them, now re-energized at seeing his target, but Izuku disappeared, reappearing in front of him and kicking him into the sky. The shockwave alone was enough to blow everyone back, and before they knew it, Izuku blasted off after him. What the hell was that? Since when could you fly? Overhaul roared in pain. Izuku rushed forward as the villain shot out his arms to attack, blowing them off and landing a punch to his stomach, sending him flying again. He was shattering his bones with each hit, but that was why he had Eri with him. Her power was the trump card in defeating Overhaul. His arms were healed again, and he attacked his opponent, not giving him time to fight back. Izuku hit him with a flurry of combos, and again elbowed him in the nose, breaking it once again. Overhaul screamed in pain. What the hell? Izuku landed a barrage of punches so fast that they literally ripped up Overhaul's body entirely, leaving only his torso, which was starting to bring itself back together. The villain's eyes widened, this time in fear, and realization that he had lost. Izuku's green eyes glowed with anger, rage, and the determination to win. You'll never get to harm anyone ever again, go to hell. Izuku clocked him square on the face, sending him down from the sky and cratering into the ground below. His body was steaming, sizzling like he had just come out of a frying pan, and he was unconscious. Overhaul had been beaten. Izuku landed with much difficulty, tired, and because Eri's quirk was going haywire. But luckily she calmed down and Aizawa was there to handle the situation. He took the girl off Izuku, who shortly collapsed of exhaustion. He woke up again, but this time in a void. It was black all over, except where he was standing on. A hand tapped him on the shoulder, startling him. The owner of said hand chuckled at his reaction. It's you. Yup, it's me all right. I gotta say, you really let loose back there, but you were very, very sloppy with my quirk. Flew all over the place like a fly, the woman said. She was tall, with black hair, matching eyes, and was very beautiful. Where am I? Izuku asked, looking around. You're in your mind. Your body is gaining more access to one for all with each passing day. And in a moment of desperation you ended up reawakening my quirk factor. You understand what I'm saying, right? Yeah, I do, but are you actually alive? Izuku asked. The woman shook her head, but then nodded again, confusing him. Well yeah, but no, I'm not sure how to explain it. A part of us is stored in the quirk with each user, which is what you're seeing right now, she explained. Ah, I get it now. So who are you exactly? The woman landed softly next to him and smiled. Nana Shimura, I'm Toshinori's teacher. A wave of recognition washed over Izuku's face. You're All Might's teacher? Her smile widened even more and she nodded, explaining how she had met a young All Might, and how she gave him the quirk, up until she was killed. Her smile had dropped a little as she reached that part of the story. That's my story. Sorry it took so long to tell, it's only been a few minutes though, Izuku replied, confused. Nana shook her head and explained. Time moves differently here, it's probably been a few hours already. Seriously? XXX. Izuku slowly opened his eyes, back in the real world, and looked around, or at least tried to. His neck was very heavy, but he caught a mop of periwinkle blue hair on his bedside. It was Nejire. She had probably been there a while, as she looked tired herself, as her eyes were puffy and strained. Izuku didn't say anything, because it looked like she was talking to him, unaware that he was awake. He was always curious as to why she seemed to like him so much. What was her reason? You really had me worried back then, you know. When I arrived and I didn't see you, I was scared that something happened to you. Then you came back, and leapt right at the danger again. You're always like that. We're here for you too, so can't you afford to be a little more selfish? She intertwined her fingers with his as she spoke to him. Her head shot up, feeling his fingers moving. Senpai. Izuku, you're awake. You should get some rest. I'm fine, the boy said, noticing how tired she looked. No, I can't, not while you're still here, she retorted. Please, I'm not the only one who went through stuff today. We all did. You need rest just as much as I do. Nejire sighed and conceded to his pleas. You sure? Yeah. Pretty sure I'm gonna pass out anyways, he joked, despite sounding tired. Nejire nodded and squeezed his hand, before leaving the hospital, tired yes, but more worried for Izuku and glad that he was okay. True to his words, he fell right back to sleep. I told you playing in the rain would make you sick, Nejire. Ah. It was fun though, I don't regret it one. ATCHOO, bit. The girl replied with a sniffle. Izuku facepalmed. Sometimes I wonder if I'm really the younger one here. Hey, that's mean, Izuku. I didn't mean it, it was a joke, he said in his defense. Nejire pouted and looked away, but giggled. Izuku's pretty grown up for his age, isn't he? Indeed he is, another voice answered, as her mother entered the room. Hey mom, I totally passed out today, Nejire reported. That's not something to be happy about, Izuku exclaimed, pushing her back down to a lying position. The woman chuckled and ruffled Izuku's hair. Thank you for looking after her, Izuku. I'll be sure to treat you to something next time. Really? He asked with a smile. Yes, I promise. I want a treat too, mom. Nejire cut in. Of course honey, that is if you be a good girl and rest. That means you won't be able to play around for a few days. Nejire frowned at the thought. Not being able to play with Izuku seemed unbearable, inconceivable for her child's mind. She would literally die of boredom. But why? You're sick, Nejire. And it's a cold. You don't want Izuku to get a cold because of you now, do you? She sighed in defeat. No, I don't. Her mother turned to Izuku, who was giggling at the girl's expense, pushing up his bangs. She smiled at him. My, you have quite the handsome face, Izuku. Has anyone ever told you that? Not really, Izuku replied, blushing at the remark. Ah. No fair, mom. Nejire protested. Her mother chuckled at the reaction to her opinion. She smirked at her daughter. I was just saying if Izuku opened up his face a bit more he'd be very popular with girls. Nejire's face turned red, in anger at the thought. No no no. I'm the only one who gets to see Izuku's face. No one else. Say Izuku, will you do that? Promise me you won't change your hair. I don't want you to forget about me. Well, I guess. I never planned to change it, he said shyly. Her smile grew and she laid back down, content. Her mother could only chuckle. To be young again. XXX Izuku stood in front of the mirror in his bathroom, looking at what was on his mind that entire morning. His hair. That dream he had, or was it really a dream? It felt like he was replaying his memories, but he didn't think he had done all that. Still. I guess I'll leave it be then. Gone this far with it anyways, he said and resumed brushing his teeth. He had just been discharged from the hospital, and was completely cleared to continue with hero-related activities. He took his shower and picked up his uniform to get change. Yo. Gah. Thud. Ow. Izuku groaned, looking up at the ceiling. Sorry about the scare there, Izuku, but hey, at least you didn't have a heart attack. Ms. Shimu. No. No, Izuku sweat dropped, but corrected himself. What are you doing here, Nana? The semi-transparent woman smiled in satisfaction. That sounds much better, doesn't it? Izuku noticed that he was basically naked and hurriedly covered himself up. Nana raised an eyebrow, but then realized why. I used to be a mom, Izuku. Nothing I haven't seen before, though I must say. Yours is quite impressive, the floating woman said with a small blush. Even more reason to cover up, Izuku yelled back, quickly slipping into his underwear. Having a supposed dead person now floating around him was quite the experience. What's more was that no one else could see her, meaning if he was caught talking to himself, the person would probably get the wrong idea. I suggest that you get training with float as quickly as possible. He raised an eyebrow. Is that the name of your quirk? I thought it was just basically flying. Nana shook her head and explained how her quirk worked. Not really. See, when I had it, it could be classified as floating, but the quirk has had time to grow lying dormant in one for all. So it's basically supercharged. Huh, Izuku finished. Yup, you're a pretty smart kid, Izuku, though you should really get going, or you'll be late for class again. Izuku nodded and made his way to the door, then stopped and looked at her. What are you going to do in the meantime? Oh, relax, it's not like I can physically touch stuff. Plus, I'm always with you. Izuku cringed at her choice of words. That sounded creepy, he stated. You got the message. Later, he watched as the woman faded away with a cloud of smoke, and he closed his door behind him. The walk to school was pretty normal, that's if you could count Nejire jumping him on occasions. He was pretty used to it by now, and really he didn't mind. Her company was something he had begun to like more and more lately, and those dreams he had been having were beginning to get more vivid. The girl looked exactly like Nejire, had the same name, and even personality, so it was her then. But he felt like he had missed something. I want you to promise me something, Izuku. What's that? I want you to promise that. He stopped and looked up at the sky. Huh. How's his training been going? Honestly, I can't say he's made much progress really. That's why I asked for young Uraraka to be here. I thought that she'd be a big help. Well, she has, but it's still slower progress than I'm used to from the boy. Aizawa nodded as the two men watched from a distance. Izuku had been practicing float now for about a week, and while he was struggling to control it, it was very slow progress. I think we should take a break, Deku. What do you say? Uraraka asked. I guess so. Both teens landed softly on the floor and sat down to rest. Izuku looked deep in thought. The training was going well, but he felt like he was missing something entirely. The swimming example was a good one, but not quite a fit for float. Izuku sighed. So you're finally going to help me out? It's been an entire week, Nana? Uraraka turned to him with a raised eyebrow. Lately he seemed to have been talking to himself. Sorry, I was just talking to yourself, I know. You carry on, she said with a small laugh. Izuku turned to the woman sitting next to him with pleading eyes, and Nana, being a mother, caved into the pressure. Fine. I'll give you a clue though, and just that. Izuku smiled a bit and waited for her to speak. Well, float works like how your friend explained to you, but with one for all. It's basically flying now. You'd have to work on the quirk while in motion, and not standing in a single spot. Maybe you could try training with someone who has good mobility in the air. If you do that, then the quirk is a piece of cake to control. Izuku chewed on that for a while, not noticing that Nana had left him. What she said made a lot of sense. His approach to training was the thing he was getting wrong all this time. He needed mobility, in other words, someone who could basically fly. There were a few people who came to mind, the most prominent being Nejire, but wouldn't she be too busy? Ua was preparing for its cultural festival coming up in a short time, and apparently she was running for the beauty pageant. He didn't want to intrude on whatever plans she may have had, all because he wanted to train his quirk. Is something wrong? You've been lost in thought since we left the training room? Uraraka asked as they headed back towards the dorms. Nothing really. I was just thinking back on something, regarding the training, he replied, still looking forward. What is it? First off, I'd like to thank you for taking your time to help me out with this. It means a lot to me, but I've been thinking and I got the idea that maybe the training approach is all wrong. We've been focusing on staying balanced in one single spot. It's helped a lot, but I think I'll have to find someone who can help me with movement. Oh, that makes sense. Do you have anyone in mind? The girl asked. Izuku scratched the back of his head. Well, there's only one person I know who can fly, Nejire-senpai, he replied. Something about that tweaked a sour reaction from Uraraka. Unbeknownst to the boy, she had feelings for him, ever since their early days in the school, but then Nejire came out of nowhere and just swept him off with her. She was so bold, downright brazen in some of the things she did with Izuku. In a way, she respected that type of boldness. She and Nejire got along just fine, but the Izuku issue was a problem that was brewing slowly, and would explode someday. Is something wrong, Uraraka? It's nothing, Deku. Let's head back, she replied, walking ahead of him. Doesn't feel like it as though. XXX. Okay, I'll just ask, and I'll be on my way. Don't get your hopes up, Izuku. He had made his way to the third-year dorms after school to see his senpai. All Might agreed to him asking her for help, but honestly he wasn't sure if she would be able to. No harm in trying though. The other third-years looked at him as he peeped in, making the boy nervous. Yo, Green, over here, a voice called. He turned to the side seeing a girl with pink hair motioning for him. He had seen her with Nejire multiple times around school, so she must have been her friend. Sorry for coming in like this, he began. The girl patted the seat next to her and he sat down. No biggie. You were looking for Nejire, weren't you? Izuku looked down shyly at the attention that he was getting from her. Her eyes were pretty intimidating if he was being honest. He nodded in response. You don't have to be scared of me, I don't bite you know, she said with a small smile. Yeah. I just wasn't planning on staying. I was going to ask Senpai something and head back to my dorms actually. Izuku explained. Huh. Well, sorry if I made you feel uncomfortable. Your name's Izuku, right? Why yeah. Izuku's actually my first name. It's Izuku Midoriya. Ah, first name basis already, she said to herself, then glanced at the boy. He really didn't seem like much in her eyes, nothing special. Wait. An insect had flown into his eye, and he tried to get it out. In the process of doing so, he pushed back the bangs in front of his face, fully exposing it. Holy shit, he's actually hot, the girl screamed internally. As quickly as she had seen it, he covered it up. It was a bit of a bummer, having a face like that and hiding it behind his hair. He would be pretty popular if he showed off a little bit. Since she isn't here, I'll leave now. Wasn't betting on the chance that she was anyways, Izuku said, getting up. Yeah. She's got the beauty pageant coming up. It's her last year to try and win it. Izuku stopped and turned with a look of surprise. She hasn't won it before? Yu chuckled at his reaction. It was pretty understandable. Yeah. There's this girl who edges her to it, really bossy and all that. So Nejire's been pretty intense about this whole thing. Even more reason not to bother her. I'll see you around, senpai. He waved and left. That just cemented it for him. He couldn't afford to bother her with his problems. She already had her plate full as is. I'm a bit excited to see the beauty pageant though, he said to himself. The next day, hey. No running in the halls. Class 1A were out for lunch break, and heard the sound of running footsteps coming from down the hall. Hey, isn't that Hado senpai? Suyu asked. Izuku you? Said boy turned just in time to catch her weight. Luckily she wasn't heavy, and balanced himself. Nejire took a few moments to catch her breath, using his shoulder to support herself. Glad I could find you, she said in between breaths. Is something wrong? The boy asked with a raised eyebrow. Yes, no, just come with me a sec, she said, taking his hand and leading him away from his classmates. They stopped when they were both alone. I heard you came to see me at the dorms yesterday, she began. Oh yeah, but you were busy, and I don't want to trouble you anyways. Did you need something from me? She asked, tilting her head to the side. I wanted you to help me control my flight, but I heard you've been working on other stuff, so I don't want to bother you with stuff like this, he explained. I can make time for that. It's not big deal, she replied almost immediately. Izuku shook his head in disagreement. No, you need to focus on what you've been working on. I don't want you to lose the beauty pageant because you decided to help me. Nejire pouted and pinched his arm playfully. I can make time for it, and also, helping Izuku is way more important than that beauty pageant. Izuku's face took a slightly redder tinge at the sincerity and sweetness in her voice. She looked like an angel right now. He slowly brought his hand to cover his blushing face. What's wrong, Izuku? You're all red. Are you perhaps embarrassed? She asked in a teasing tone. Stop messing with me, senpai. He protested, earning a laugh from her. Yu was right. Teasing him would definitely get a reaction. Maybe she should do it more often. Okay. But you're not getting away from this, you hear? When the cultural festival is over, I'll help you out. Sound good? Why yeah. Okay senpai. Just Nejire is fine, K. She corrected, putting her finger to his lips. Izuku nodded and stepped back from the girl. Luckily his bangs covered his red face, but Nejire could see straight through them. Let's head back then. Izuku looked to the smiling girl who was holding his hand, and wondered again, why did he always let her do whatever she wanted? Was it that he liked her? Or was it something else? I guess. No, it can't be, he thought to himself. XXX The cultural festival had started off with a bang, with Class 1A's insane concert. They definitely had the best event among the first years, despite protests from the other first years. Izuku was happy with his role in his class's performance, but what made him happiest was seeing the smile on Eri's face during the song. The girl had been through enough that she wasn't able to smile, and he was glad they could blow away all the demons that haunted her. Currently he was walking with said girl, who had insisted on following him around the festival. He was heading towards where the beauty pageant was holding. Mirio led him into one of the rooms. Izuku was curious as to why he was being dragged her. Oh hey, it's Izuku, and Eri, nay Izuku screamed. Nejire was floating in front of him in her pageant dress, and he was getting a face full of boobies. Sue, how'd I look? She asked the boy who had jumped back. You look great. The dress really highlights you well, he said with a small blush. Mirio tilted his head at the interaction, and was pulled aside by Yuyu. You seeing what I'm seeing? Yeah. When did this happen? He asked. Really? You haven't noticed? A few weeks now? Yuyu replied in a harsh whisper. Look. We should give them some alone time. The festival is a perfect opportunity. If Nejire wants to jump his bones, now's the time to do that. Mirio looked confused at her choice of words. Jump his bones. What's that mean? Your innocence is why I like you so much, too precious, the girl said with a sigh. What? Nothing. It's nothing, Izuku. I want another candy apple, Eri said, tugging at his sleeve. Sure thing. Let's go get one, he said. Bye guys. Wish me luck, Nejire said with a wave. Internally Izuku was thankful for Eri's miraculous intervention. He didn't think he could handle Nejire's up-close and personal approach today. Eri seemed to be a lot more vocal than she had been the last few weeks. Thankfully she was still a little kid who could potentially forget about what she had gone through, but again she may not. Overhaul really was a piece of shit. They got to the stall and he got a few extra just in case she would like them later on, though it probably wasn't too healthy. He and Eri got back just in time for the pageant, or at least Nejire's turn. His eyes widened as he gazed upon the angelic figure twirling in the air above them. She looked stunning, and the little twinkling effect from her quirk was the icing on the cake. One of the judges even fainted, which said enough. Izuku was pretty sure she had won. Everyone did. Last time, or third time, was definitely the charm. I finally did it. I was so nervous I could die, the girl exclaimed as soon as she was out of earshot of the crowd. Yeah, and I'll say you totally killed it out there. You had everyone's jaws on the ground, Yuyu added with a small giggle. I'm just glad it's over now. There's so much I want to do tonight. It's my last festival after all, Nejire said, running off to the changing rooms. Hiya senpai. Yo Izuku. How was the pageant? The girl asked, knowing all too well that it'd get a reaction out of the boy. It did. Well, it was nice. Nejire's senpai looked really pretty, he said. I told you to drop the senpai, didn't I? Said girl cut in, coming out in a simple but cute dress. Sorry. I forgot. He apologized. Where's Eri? Oh, she was already tired out, so I had to take her back to rest before coming back here, Izuku explained. Yuyu looked at the two of them and suddenly spoke up. Hey, here's an idea. Why don't you guys go around and see what the other classes have to offer? Izuku, you go with her, sound good? Yay. That's a great idea. Right, Izuku? Yeah, I guess, he answered, not really knowing what else he could have said in that moment, and much like his usual interactions with her, he was dragged off into the school festival. It was actually a lot of fun going around. He hadn't done anything to let loose in a long time, and he got the chance to. In fact, everyone did. A lot of things that most schools would do pre-quirk era were being lost. It was now all about quirks and heroism. Tonight was a reminder that they were more than just a bunch of superpowered individuals, but just teenagers. Nejire, I'm going to get ice cream. What flavor do you want? Izuku asked. The girl seemed to brew over her choices, before turning back to him with a bright smile. Surprise me. Izuku nodded, though confused, and approached the stall. He got for himself chocolate mint, and for Nejire. He had been stumped, but then a memory flashed through his mind. You like chocolate mint? I hate it. Hey, it's actually good? Enough bickering you two. Or I'll turn this car right back. Nejire's mother threatened. That did the trick. Both children immediately quieted down, but still gave each other side glances from time to time. What's up with a name like Rocky Road anyways? He asked. Beats me, but it's my favorite flavor. The girl replied, taking a big bite into it, even after warnings, then groaned a little. Brain freeze. Told you, you should be more careful with just biting into ice cream, her mom said with a giggle. Mom. Sir? You still here? Izuku blinked back into reality and scratched the back of his head. I'll have Rocky Road for the other one please. Sure thing. He paid and got the 2 treats, then headed back to where Nejire was seated. She seemed to be lost in thought too, and he had to tap her shoulder to get her attention. Here. I hope I didn't get something you hated, he said, handing it over to her. Her eyes widened as she saw the flavor. It had brought back so many memories, and she looked back at him shocked. You hate it, don't you? No. How did you end up picking this? She asked. Izuku rubbed his neck, looking down at the ground as if looking for an answer. It just felt right, I guess. He thought she didn't hear, but then he panicked seeing her eyes filled with tears. Maybe she actually hated it after all. He must have screwed up somehow. If it's the flavor, I can get you another one. No, this one's fine. Perfect actually. Rocky Road is my favorite ice cream flavor. Izuku looked down and sighed in relief. He really thought he had fumbled it somehow. He didn't know why, but he never wanted to see her sad, cry, or have any emotion that wasn't like her usual bright and sunny personality. It just felt wrong. His face felt the gentle breeze that blew, which meant his hair wasn't in the way. Nejire had pushed it back. Can you stay like this? Just for tonight? He smiled and nodded, actually putting it back in a little man bun with a rubber band he had on him just in case. Is this better? Yeah, much better, she said, leaning into him. Izuku looked up at the sky, and the stars, they looked so beautiful right now. Whoa! Check out the stars, and the constellations, Izuku said excitedly. You really like stars, don't you, Izuku? Yeah, I think they're pretty cool, and they're so pretty. Nejire pouted and looked away. Why don't you just marry one then? Huh? That's not possible, Izuku replied with a deadpan expression. Yeah, well, you've never said I'm pretty. It's not fair, some stars get compliments, she complained. Okay, sorry. You're pretty, Nejire, prettier than all the stars in the night sky. Gosh, that sounded cheesy, Izuku said, covering his face in embarrassment. Nejire then switched moods immediately as one caught her attention. It wasn't necessarily the brightest, but it was the color that caught her eye. It had a bluish tinge to it, just like her hair. Hey, Izuku, look. There's a star that's just like me, she said, pointing at it. Ah, it does look like you. So what about it? It was night time, so Izuku couldn't see the blush that the girl had on her face. Well, remember what I said, about marrying a star? She began. Yeah, what about it? Izuku asked, confused. I guess it's okay if it was that one. That's a weird thing to say. I'm not gonna marry a star, you know, he said with a chuckle. Huh. We'll see about that, Nejire said with a small smile. Izuku. What? The moon is beautiful tonight, isn't it? Uraraka, you seem down. Is anything wrong? I'm not sure, Momo. I'm just feeling conflicted about something, the brown-haired girl said with a sigh. Her raven-haired classmate took a seat next to her, a look of curiosity at what could possibly be worrying her friend. Anything you can tell me? It's about Deku, Uraraka said. Ah, Midoriya. Did something happen between you two? Momo asked curiously. Uraraka shook her head and explained. It's just that lately, he's been distant, from me especially. I can't help but feel like I'm losing him somehow. That must be difficult for you, but I have to ask, does this mean you finally admit that you do like him? Well, I guess. Yeah, Uraraka admitted. Momo took some seconds to absorb her friend's confession. That is relieving to hear, Uraraka. It's good that you've come to terms with your feelings, so how exactly are you losing him, as you termed it? The brown-haired girl took a few moments to collect her thoughts, or at least to put it into coherent words. Hado-senpai was the only word that she could come up with. Hado-senpai. Momo repeated, or more like questioned, though it's not like she didn't know what the girl was talking about. Yeah. Ever since she came along, he's been different. Sure, it's a good difference, but it makes me feel sad that I couldn't bring out that change in him. And she's made so much more progress with him that I can't hope to catch up, and she's not even in our class. If she was, they'd probably be a couple by now. Deku too seems to have taken a liking to her, so how am I going to win against all that? She's a great person, and very approachable. She's bubbly, and knows how to deal with people, and she's really pretty on top of that, along with her reputation among the student body. The odds are basically zero, Uraraka said in a long-winded rant. Momo listened to her friend's concerns, and could agree with what she said, however. And I believe you both share similar qualities. The only difference between you and Hado-senpai is approach. Approach? Yeah, approach. Midoriya may be one of the smartest students in class, but he's also a boy. Boys tend to have hints fly right over their heads, trust me, I know. Someone like Hado-senpai is not at all subtle in her approach, and with Midoriya it seems that's the best way to handle it. You have to be direct, aggressive even. That's why she has made so much progress with him. She didn't wait for him to catch on to what she wanted, she just went for it. I believe you have a chance if you should do the same. Uraraka looked to her friend, who at that moment had a look of understanding, like she knew exactly how she was feeling at the moment. Yao Momo, what did you mean you know? That's something I'd rather keep to myself, but I'll advise that you take action, or you'll come to regret it. Just like I did. Later, she said, getting up and leaving. I do hope it's not too late for you, Uraraka, but again, I felt the exact same way, going up against you. Uraraka took her friend's words seriously. If she wanted to possibly win Izuku over, she would have to take initiative, be the aggressor, but could she ever really be as aggressive as Nejire? That was a tall task to meet up to. XXX. Whoa. Watch out for the poles. Crash. Ow. That's gonna leave a bruise. Izuku said, getting up and dusting himself down. He had been training with Nejire on controlling his flight, and along with little tips from Nana who popped up at regular intervals, he was starting to get the hang of it, but like most learners he got a bit carried away in his own progress and ended up crashing. Nejire dropped down next to him with a small smile on her face. You got a bit carried away, didn't you? Yeah. Sorry about that. He apologized, scratching the back of his head. No biggie. I was going to say we take a break anyways, so let's go, she said, taking him by the arm. Two others watched on from a distance, the duo of All Might and Nezu, who were taking note of his progress. I will admit, young Hado's methods are unusual, but so far he's made tremendous progress, All Might remarked. The small stoat next to him nodded in agreement. Yes, but I suspect that it's due to the personal relationship between them. All Might raised an eyebrow at the principal's explanation. Nezu smiled and continued. You've never had an eye for things like relationships between people, so you didn't consider that a major factor in his progress was who he was training with. Uraraka was fine, but because they weren't as close as he is with Hado, the progress was slightly delayed. At first he struggled, but it's only been 3 days with Hado, and he's already mastered the basics of flight, and now is learning more advanced maneuvers in a limited space. Do you understand what I mean? All Might growled a bit at the hidden jab, but got the message. Wait. You're saying they're dating? Nezu brought up his hand to stop the man from his own thinking direction. I never said that, I just pointed out that they're rather close. Definitely more than friends, but the possibility that they may be dating is there, but let's not jump to conclusions here. All Might exhaled and looked to the two who were heading for the door, holding hands. He wasn't wrong to think about it. As far as he knew Izuku, he was a pretty shy person, so him holding hands with a girl was definitely out of character. Back with the two. Where are we going? Izuku asked as they walked through the empty halls of the school. The other students had all gone to the dorms for the day. The rooftop. I want to get a good look of the sunset, she answered. The doors leading up to the roof were locked, but then Nejire had an idea. Why don't we just fly up there? Wait, isn't that prohibited? Izuku asked. Nope. We're still training after all, this is just a more practical part, yeah. Izuku wasn't really convinced by her half-assed explanation. She really just wanted to sit on the rooftop. Well, he didn't mind. Okay. That makes sense, great, so up we go, she said, floating off the ground, with him doing the same. The difference between flying inside a training facility and flying outside was night and day. Nejire flew past the roof and began to make distance between them. Catch me, Izuku. Wait, I thought you said we were just heading to the roof, he yelled. While he said that, a larger part of him wanted to go after her, and he did just that. He sped off after her, remembering everything he had learned in the last few days. It wasn't enough to catch her, but enough that he wasn't left too far behind. If he used too much power, he would shoot off into a wall or tree or something. Race you back. Loser does whatever the winner says, she said, racing back towards the starting point. That's not even a fair race, Nejire, Izuku protested. Of course she won, and landed on the roof with a big grin. Izuku landed not long after and pouted. You cheated, I did, but you now have to do whatever I say. That was the deal, wasn't it? She replied with a smirk. I guess. As long as it's not something crazy. Nejire sat down on the ledge and patted the spot next to her for him to sit. When he did, she rested her head on his shoulder, and they just remained there, in comfortable silence. Izuku did wonder why she was so quiet, but didn't say anything. He was pretty sure they wouldn't head back to the training facility again, seeing as it was already getting dark. So, what do you want? He asked out of the blue. Let me think. Nejire thought about it, and then landed on an idea, a crazy one, but one that she wanted. She turned to Izuku with a somewhat serious look. Kiss me, I said kiss me. That's what I want, she repeated. Izuku froze. He wasn't expecting something like this. He may have taken too long thinking on what to do, seeing as she sighed and looked down. Sorry. That came out of nowhere. Wait, I'll do it, he said. What am I even saying? He screamed internally. Really? You will? He meekly nodded and slowly leaned in towards her. She did same, closing her eyes. It wasn't long, but they definitely did it. Izuku pulled away with a red face and looked at anywhere but her. Nejire smiled and leaned into him again. You're blushing, Izuku. I could say same for you, he replied. He was right. Despite her attempt to tease him, she was also as red as a freshly boiled lobster. That was my first kiss, she said again. Are you serious? Izuku asked in surprise, turning to her. Nejire nodded. Yeah, it is. Wow. I thought that you'd, have had a boyfriend at some point, given how pretty you are. Nope. Never had one. And I'm glad my first kiss was Izuku. I wouldn't have anyone else. He blushed and looked away. That was way too wholesome for his heart to handle. Let's head back. As nice as this is, I don't want to stay out past curfew. Again, she said, getting up and stepping off the side of the building into the air. The shiny golden effect that came with her quirk gently swirling round her feet like pixie dust. Izuku got up as well, slowly floating into the air beside her. Unlike her gently buzzing shimmers, his in contrast was green and erratic, and sparked all over his body. Yeah. They slowly flew back towards the dorms, not really rushing despite the concerns for breaking curfew. Izuku landed on the ground and waved at his senpai. Goodney. Nejire had closed the distance between them and wrapped him in a big hug, then kissed him on the cheek. Good night, Izuku. He held his chest as she flew away. His heart was nearly beating out of his chest. He may not have been sure of it, but he was now. Izuku Midoriya had feelings for Nejire. XXX. The training with Nejire had paid off tremendously. He was now almost as good as her at flying, though he still had a few things left to perfect. It came in good timing too, as they were up against Class B in a best-of-5 battle simulation. As usual, some members were extremely vocal about their disdain for Class 1A, being NATO Monoma. Class B is here to crush your scummy asses. Oh great. Monoma's here, Shoto said with a sigh. Izuku shared the same sentiments as his heterochromatic friend, but said nothing. Aizawa and Vlad King explained the rules and the teams were selected. Izuku's team consisted of he, Uraraka, Mina and Mineta. They were going up. Monoma's team, just great. Looks like you got the short end of the stick, Shoto remarked. Tell me about it. Huh? Looking down on us, are you? We'll see when it's time to fight, I'll show. Thankfully he was knocked out by Kendo, who gave a quick apology before dragging the unconscious boy away. The battles began with a bang, an exciting battle which resulted in Class B taking the first win. It didn't help as Monoma was now awake, screaming about their superiority, but again was knocked out. The next match was more of a rivalry between Momo and Kendo, which ended in a draw. The other two matches ended in wins for Class 1A, with Bakugo's team completely washing their opponents with a perfect run. It was finally Izuku's turn, and he knew the opponent would try to single him out. In his team, he was the heavy hitter, so it was obvious who they would prioritize, and they had an extra man with Shinso. He was the most dangerous person on the opposition team, and they had to plan around not communicating through words. Match 5, begin. Both teams immediately rushed into the fight. Izuku had decided that splitting up was a surefire way to lose. Much like Bakugo's approach, they would just rush into an all-out brawl. The B team weren't expecting this, and were caught off guard, with Kodai immediately being trapped by Mineta's balls. "They're just coming in like that?" Monoma yelled in confusion. What kind of plan was that? It blew all his planning out the doors, and he hated improvising, but it was one of his greatest strengths. He had taken Shinso's brainwashing quirk, and 2 other quirks from his teammates. It would prove useful if someone were to talk to him. Class A had already taken that into consideration, and didn't want to take chances with the blonde copycat. Izuku had quickly knocked out another of the opposition members with a devastating combo, and Mineta stuck him to the wall. Monoma gritted his teeth. They were getting taken out so easily. In a span of few minutes they had already lost 2 people. "This sucks ass," he yelled, launching debris in all directions. Izuku was looking around for Shinso. He had to take him out if they wanted to win this without any problems. Much like Bakugo, he wanted a clean sweep, no questions asked. He flew up into the air, shocking the Class B students who had yet to find out this new development. "Midoriya can fly. Damn it. This guy's always using a new trick," the blonde yelled in frustration. Izuku spotted Shinso from the air and blasted towards him, but it was a trap apparently. Yanagi and Monoma had set a trap in case Izuku would find a way to Shinso. He was surrounded from all sides, and Monoma cackled in delight. "Let's see how your flight helps you now. They got me, but this isn't over." Shinso was getting away and it would be hard finding him. With the time remaining, they would end up tying in a draw. Izuku's eyes glowed green for an instant, and all of a sudden, huge black tendrils shot out in all directions, latching onto every member of the opposing team. "What the hell is this? How many quirks do you freaking have?" Monoma yelled. That was the exact same reaction as everyone else. Izuku had just learned he could fly not even a month ago, and now this. "Aizawa. What the hell is that? You never gave info on that," Vlad King yelled. "Because I never knew he could do that. I don't know what's going on with the kid. I'm just as shocked as you are," the man explained. All Might watched in shock. That was another of the previous user's quirks. With the new ability, he had captured and knocked out all of the opponents, leading his team to a clean sweep victory. "Dude. What even are you? How many quirks do you have, man?" Kirishima asked as Izuku landed where the students had gathered. "Sorry, I'm just as confused as you are." He really didn't have an answer for the questions hurled at him. All Might gave him a nod and walked away. They would need to talk about this later. The day ended with Class A winning by 3-1. "Good work on not going crazy back there, kid. I'm impressed." Izuku turned to the source of the voice, seeing a bald man floating beside him. His eyes widened. "You're another past user. Banjo Daigoro is the name. Nice to meet ya." After school, the classes were both done with their battles for the day, and most of the attention was on Izuku. Everyone wanted to know what the hell he just pulled back there. Bakugo was foaming in the mouth with jealousy that his rival was leaving him behind. It was a bit too much for the boy to handle, not exactly being a social butterfly. His ears twitched hearing a familiar sound. Something was coming at them, and fast. By now, he already knew what, or who that was in this case, and as if on autopilot spun round and plucked his flying senpai out of the air, giving her a scolding look. "You can't use your quirk on school grounds without permission." Nejire paid no attention to his words and bombarded him with a barrage of questions, not even letting him answer her. Finally he had enough and put his hand over her mouth, shushing her. Ask one at a time, and remember, if you don't breathe you're gonna pass out again. Please, he begged, letting her go. Sorry, I got carried away, she apologized. Hado-senpai, what are you doing here? Uraraka asked. Ochako. Hey there, I heard what happened today, and I was dying to know more. Is it true? Did Izuku really get another quirk? Uraraka chuckled and nodded, though frowned a bit at how Nejire seemed to be in his personal space. More annoying was that Izuku didn't seem to mind. Well yeah, it was something all right, she replied. Nejire shifted her attention to someone else, who was walking away from the commotion. Hey, you're Yaoyorozu, right? Yes I am. Do you need something, senpai? Momo asked, though there was a bit of iciness in her voice. Nejire furrowed her brow at her tone, but shrugged it off just as quickly. Izuku has mentioned you on many occasions, so I wanted to see for myself. Plus, I've seen you two around school a lot, so, are you two good friends? Momo nodded, a small smile slipping out, but she quickly threw it away. Nejire's eyes narrowed uncharacteristically. She may have seemed airheaded, or even ditzy most times, but it sure as hell didn't mean she was dumb. She had her suspicions, and her interactions just confirmed them. Forgive my directness with this question, but what exactly is your relationship with Midoriya? Momo asked suddenly. Nejire smiled. Let's say, childhood friends, yeah. I'm not so naive, senpai. If you won't tell me, then I won't pry further. Nejire's smile dropped, and she looked at Momo with a serious expression, unlike her previous demeanor. The raven-haired girl took a short breath. Well, it was nice meeting you, Yaoyorozu. We should talk again sometime, she spoke up, smiling again. Nejire skipped back to Izuku, who was waiting for her. She acted like what Momo was implying flew over her head, but that wasn't the case. She knew exactly what she was saying, but in reality, there was no battle to begin with. Nejire had already won before it even started, and the small smirk that crept onto her face showed just that. Good luck to the both of you. A.N. They finally kissed, yeah. It may seem fast, but realistically I feel this is the way it'd go. Nejire is not someone who would beat around the bush when she wants something. She'd just go for it. Well, that's my opinion either way. Apologies if it's not up to your tastes. I don't particularly like long and overdrawn romance stories, it just fizzles out for me, which is why I probably won't ever be making anything more than a 15-chapter story. I would lose motivation midway and most likely abandon the story. Also, we're about at midway through the story, and I've pretty much written down the entire thing. I'll just upload at regular intervals. There will be time skips, or a time skip at some point, so bear that in mind. Enough of my little rant. I hope you liked the chapter, or at the very least found it bearable. So those black things were your quirk? Yup, the name of the quirk is Black Whip. I'm actually the 6th user of the quirk. So that means you're my predecessor, yes. Ah, Shimura, it's nice to meet you again, Banjo said with a hearty laugh. Nana shared the same sentiment as her predecessor. Izuku just watched with a look of disbelief. He now had two people only he could see, talking over his head. If someone saw this they'd think he was crazy. He cut into their discussion with a question, one that he had asked Nana when she first appeared. So how exactly did Black Whip awaken? Was it your doing? Not at all, kid. That was all on you. You see, you were in a moment of desperation. Much like how you were when you unlocked Float, Nana added. Yes, in that moment you were solely focused on catching your opponents, and boom, Black Whip. If you had been desperate for something else, you'd probably have unlocked another quirk other than mine, the man explained. Huh. That makes sense. Though it was very hard to keep under control. If I had lost focus for even a second. Yeah, and that's hella good on you for that. You kept your mind clear, and managed your emotions perfectly. I'd say it was a successful awakening. Yeah, he's a fast learner all right. Nana added with a small smile. You might be helpful, but you can be pretty ambiguous in your instructions, Izuku grumbled. Nana mumbled something incoherent under her breath, probably throwing a jab at the boy. The two specters decided to leave him be for the meantime, as he was heading back to class. You never seem to surprise me, Shoto said. Izuku almost jumped, and hoped that the boy hadn't seen him talking to himself. He didn't. I really don't know what happened out there, it just came out of me. Maybe it's a quirk evolution or something, he said, trying to explain it off. That would make the most sense, but I never thought there'd be more to your quirk than just raw power. Now you can fly and shoot webs out of your hands. I'm not Spider-Man Todoroki, Izuku said with a small chuckle. You could be like a Spider-Man with super strength. A super Spider-Man. Yeah, that sounds catchy, Shoto mused. I'll think about it. I still haven't decided on a hero name yet. Hey you two. Uraraka greeted, catching up to them. Uraraka. Where have you been? Shoto asked. The nurse's office. I went to check up on Iida after I heard you guys were there, but I didn't see you. Oh, both boys said in unison. On the way back to class they bumped into Yuyu, who waved at Izuku. Hiya senpai, it's been a while, he greeted. Yo Izuku, and you must be Todoroki, and you're Uraraka, right? Nice to meet ya, she greeted back with a small smile. Are you heading back to the dorms? Izuku asked. Nah, I have some work to do at the teacher's faculty. Also, watch out for Nejire today, she's a bit. Well, you'll see, later. That doesn't help my thinking at all. Nejire was acting weird, well, weirder than usual. Interesting. A small tinge of red grew on his face, which his female classmate was quick to notice. The pit in her stomach grew ever so slightly. She hadn't made much progress with Izuku, though little was better than nothing. The thing was that Izuku was a very hard person to read. You could almost never tell what he was thinking, or what he would say, or how he'd react to something, but Nejire had somehow figured it out, to the point of outright knowing when Izuku did lie. Her senpai was definitely scary in her own way. They were having a little break over the winter, maybe she'd get her chance then, at least she hoped that would be the case. XXX Izuku didn't really have as much trouble controlling Black Whip as he did Float. The training was pretty straightforward with his classmate Zero, and on occasions Nejire. She would act as a moving target, and he would have to capture her with Black Whip. Unsurprisingly, it was very difficult to do so, and he may have gotten blasted on some occasions. Nejire got a bit carried away and sent an almost full-powered blast at Izuku, sending him flying into the wall on the other side of the room. She immediately yelled out and rushed to check up on him. Oh my god, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. Yeah, it's fine. Wouldn't be much of training if you didn't fight back, he said, dusting himself down. There was a small warm feeling he felt down the back of his neck. He touched the spot and made a sound of surprise, seeing red liquid on his fingers. He was bleeding. His face contorted into one of anger, though very brief. A wave of bad memories had flooded into his mind, but he quickly snapped back out of his trance-like state. Ah, blood. I'll go. Get a bandage. Wait, Nejire called, stopping him. What is it? I'm really sorry about this, she said, feeling bad. She didn't mean to make him bleed. Izuku waved off her apology and left to cover up the wound. Nejire still felt bad about it. He may not have realized it, but he looked very angry at that moment, and she couldn't help but feel the anger was directed at her. It reminded her of the last time that she got him hurt, and he had the exact same reaction. It's fine. It wasn't your fault, it was though, she said to herself. She did have her moments of overexcitement, which on occasions did more harm than good. Her energy levels could be affected by how she felt, and being too excited could make her quirk stronger. Problem was she couldn't control how strong it'd be at that point. Now Izuku was hurt again because of her. It didn't sound like something someone should beat themselves over, but it was a big deal for her. She sat down glumly, the memory of what happened last time playing in her mind. The two kids were in the infirmary, with both their mothers present, and Izuku sitting upright on the hospital bed. Auntie Inko. I'm really sorry, it was all my fault. I should have looked where I was using my quirk. Now Izuku's hurt because of me. The blue-haired girl apologized, looking very downcast. Inko rubbed the girl's back, comforting her. She did seem like she took it pretty hard. It's okay, Nejire-chan. Accidents happen. Yeah. It was out of your control. I can't blame you if your quirk tweaked out. We'll just be careful next time, Izuku added with a small smile. Masumi face-palmed, though it was actually to hide the smirk that she wore. Now wasn't the time to bring up something like that, but she couldn't help but to dwell on the thought. Izuku was really a sweet boy. And you'll have to learn to keep your emotions in check, Nejire. You don't want to hurt anyone else by accident again, do you? Nejire replied to her mother's question with a shake of her head. She wouldn't hurt anyone with her quirk again, unless they deserved it. Then that's that. If you train hard enough, you'll be able to use your quirk without losing control, and you'll be the best hero out there. Don't worry, Nejire. I'm rooting for you, Izuku said to encourage her. The girl wrapped him in a tight hug and let out a few tears. I promise I'll become better with my quirk. I'll train super hard and become super strong. You feeling better now? Izuku asked. Yeah, much better? Oh Izuku, you're spoiling her too much. Don't you want to get back at her? Even just a little? Masumi asked with a teasing tone. No, not really. Should I? The boy asked confused. She had done what she said. Nejire trained her ass off, more than what people would think she did. She became a student at UA, and earned the title as one of the strongest students in the school. Her quirk was powerful, but it was the promise she made to herself, and to Izuku that pushed her to become stronger, but then she went ahead and got him hurt, again. On the outside he ran into Momo, who was also heading towards the nurse's office. She noticed the small trail of blood and asked what happened, trailing a finger over the line of red on his neck. Izuku jumped back in slight surprise. It's just a minor wound, I was training, he explained. Ah, I see, she replied with a nod of understanding. Hey Yaoyorozu. Yes. I know this may seem a bit weird to ask, but how do you know you're in love with someone? Momo stopped and gave him a look of surprise. Why was he suddenly asking such a question, and to her of all people? Surely there were better sources for an answer, right? Yeah. Never mind that question. The boy apologized, realizing that it may have been a bit much for her to answer. No, I don't mind answering, but why ask me? I think Ashido would be a much better source for an answer. Izuku immediately shook his head, disagreeing with her reply. Ashido is the last person I would ask this question. You know how she gets, and I'm not keen on her stalking me every day, he said with a small chuckle. I suppose you have a point there. So to answer your question, she began, but paused to think about what she was going to say. I can honestly only answer you from my personal experience with said emotion, so it may seem ambiguous. Do you like someone? Izuku asked, surprised. He didn't expect her of all people to harbor such an emotion, or at least not admit it so easily. Yes. I do, unfortunately, my feelings haven't really gotten to the person in question, she said, taking a short glance at him. Oh, sorry about that. I hope they do eventually. I don't quite think so, Midoriya, don't give me such hope. XXX ring. Ring. Ah, finally, it's over, we're free. Settle down. We're still in school premises. Oh, chill out, Iida. The last class of the year had just concluded. It had been an exhausting 2 weeks for them, having to take their exams and all. The likes of Todoroki and Bakugo had now gotten their provisional hero licenses, which made both boys happy that they had caught up to the class. Over this time, Izuku did notice one thing. Nejire had stopped following him around as often. He had come to like her company, and having her absent was definitely a strange feeling for him. She always seemed to dodge him, at one point ran away when he approached her. Was it because of his bump? He had told her not to worry about it, apparently she still did. He wasn't mad at her, he couldn't be. Izuku made up his mind to clear it all out before their Christmas party, and if it meant he'd take the initiative, or have to do something out of character for his reserved self, then so be it. He didn't even wait for his classmates, who wondered where on earth he was going to with such urgency. As he reached the third-year class, he stopped at the door. Here he was, only a door standing between he and his senpai. Izuku. He turned, hearing the familiar voice of Yu, and greeted. Hey there, Haya senpai. Have you seen Nejire? Nejire was just behind him, about to sneak off. Nah, haven't seen her since she left class, the girl answered, but she motioned behind him with a small gesture. Izuku seemed to get the message and sharply turned, just as Nejire went round the corner. Thanks, Haya senpai. I owe you one. The girl chuckled as Izuku ran after her friend. Nejire didn't run far, but chose to hide. She didn't pick the best spot, because Izuku tapped her shoulder from behind. What are you hiding from? Gah! Izuku stood in front of her with a somewhat serious look on his face, which made her look down shyly. Nejire. Are you avoiding me? He asked after a moment of silence. She looked at him, trying to bring herself to lie, but she couldn't and just nodded slowly. Is it because of what happened? She nodded again. I heard Izuku, because I got carried away. Not the first time it's happened either, she said, directing the last part at herself. Izuku couldn't help but chuckle a bit. Was she really beating herself up because of something that trivial? He hurt himself way worse training with all might. You're such a child, you know, he said. Hey, I'm being serious about this. You can't just let it go like that, she cut back. So what you're saying is, you want me to punish you? Izuku asked as he stopped chuckling. WWLY yeah. Masochist, are you serious? Izuku surprised her by taking her hand and leading her away from the small crowd that was gathering around them. He stopped when they were alone again and turned to her. Okay, so your punishment, weirdly enough, she looked more content now than she did a moment ago. Was she a maso? Go on a date with me. Nejire burst into her friend's room out of nowhere, obviously startling her at the sudden noise, and making her fly up like a frightened cat. Yu. Ha. Nejire. Don't just barge into someone's room like that. I could get a heart attack, you know, the girl said, clenching her chest dramatically. You won't believe what just happened, Nejire chirped excitedly, completely ignoring her friend's complaint. Let me guess. You have a date. Nejire pouted and plopped down on her friend's bed. No fair. How did you know? Yu giggled at Nejire's childish reaction. Well, I mean, there's not much to guess. And besides, it was a guess. I just happened to be right this time. Still though, I wanted to tell you myself. Yu waved off her friend's little protest and sat up on her bed. Anyways, he finally asked, though I may have had a thing to do with it, Nejire said with a small blush. Figures. Izuku's a pretty shy guy after all. Congratulations though, big step in your relationship. Our relationship? Duh. How do you think this is gonna end? You've already kissed each other, on more than one occasion might I add, and now you're going on a date. You two might as well be dating now, Yu said with a shrug. Oh. You have a point, Nejire admitted. When's the big day? We decided during winter break, when we're all back home. A Christmas date, I see. So that's what you wanted for Christmas, Or is something else? Yu teased. Stop making fun of me. Hey, I was kidding. Stop tickling me, Nejire. Their tickle war ended in a truce, when Yu had enough and fought back, leaving both girls on the floor trembling. Doesn't sound right, NGL. I have no idea how to process this. A low voice spoke up from the doorway. They both turned to see Tamaki, who had come to return Yu's notes, and ended up seeing all that. He just dropped the notes neatly at the door and left. Wait. We can explain. It's not what you think. He hurriedly left to prepare for the Christmas party, which in all honesty he would spend alone in a corner where no one would see him. Yeah. That would be the perfect party. Too bad he was friends with the last two people on Earth that would let that happen. Tamaki. Over here. Mirio yelled, waving at him. He shrunk at the sudden attention of the other students, and mentally screamed at his friend. What a drag. XXX. The party was now in full swing, in all classes. Class 1A hosted it, and were joined by B. Of course, Monoma tried to start up something, but this time Izuku beat Kendo to it and knocked him out, in a bizarre way at that, which caught the girl's attention. How did you do that? She asked. Pressure points, much faster way to put him to sleep, and painless. If you want it to be, he explained with a somewhat ominous tone. That sounds pretty useful. Maybe you could teach me sometime? Yeah, sure. I can see why you'd need that, he said, looking at the unconscious boy. From how hard he pressed him, he should be out for about 30 minutes at most. If he started shouting again, he'd have to put him down, again. Mercy. He sighed. What did Mineta do this time? Said boy was being restrained by the girls, and then tied in front of the TV. From the horror in his eyes, he didn't even want to know what he was watching. Izuku moved in the opposite direction, as far from the chaos as he could, and ended up next to Shoto, who also had moved away from the bustle. It was pretty nice seeing his classmates unwind and be themselves. There were no worries about class rivalries, or any assignments that Aizawa would randomly pop up with to surprise them. Hopefully he won't decide to give them Christmas presents. Crowds aren't really my thing. Or parties even. Never went to one before, he said after a small round of silence between them. Same. This is my first too. The heterochromatic teen replied, a bit relieved that he wasn't the only one in that sort of situation. They were both content just watching the others mess around and have fun. Of course, there were exceptions like Iida, who had sworn to keeping order, and was failing miserably, Yaoyorozu, who also took a step back to observe, Bakugo, who had simply went up to his room to sleep, and Uraraka, who seemed to be sad about something. Izuku's brows furrowed in a small frown. Why did she look so down? At the end of the day, she was his first friend here at UA, and he was concerned for her. He got up and approached her unnoticed. She nearly screamed as he tapped her on the shoulder and walked away. She got up and followed him. They both sat down outside and said nothing for a few moments. "You seem down. Anything wrong?" he asked, finally breaking the silence. Uraraka took a few moments to collect her thoughts. "Honestly, I don't really know. Maybe this was a perfect opportunity to tell him how she had been feeling." He didn't know, but that day when he ran after Nejire, she was one of the people who saw what happened, and it confirmed things for her. Izuku was in love with the girl. The only thing stopping her from saying, or doing anything, was the fact that even if she liked him, her friendship with him was far more important to her. She didn't want to lose Izuku as a friend just because she confessed to him, all the while knowing he liked someone else. The talk she had with Momo the last time pushed something in her. Still, he deserved to know, even if it wouldn't go anywhere. "Izuku, I think there's something you should know," she began. He turned, surprised at the use of his first name. So far only Nejire and Yuyu referred to him that way. He didn't mind, seeing as Uraraka was one of his best friends, but it just felt like there was something else for her doing this. One thing was clear though, this wasn't going to be a regular conversation. "What is it? I know this would seem out of the blue, and I know it's not going anywhere, but I've really liked you, for a while now. You don't have to answer, and I'm not looking for one. I just think that as my friend, you deserve to know. And I can't keep lying to you, or myself about how I feel, but I didn't want to ruin my friendship with you." Izuku listened with a look of shock on his face. Was he really dense? Or did he just never pay attention? Probably the latter part. He finally moved his mouth to speak, after some seconds. "I'm really sorry, Uraraka. But I know. You like someone else," she finished for him. He looked down feeling guilty, and bad that he made her to cry, but unfortunately there was nothing he could do right now. She softly pushed him on the shoulder, regaining his attention. "You shouldn't feel guilty. I'm just glad you didn't run off," she admitted with a sigh of relief. The last thing she wanted was to lose him as a friend. "Well, it's the least I could do for you. Running away won't change anything, plus I'd be a huge jerk if I did that. Despite everything, you're still one of my best friends, and things shouldn't change just because of this. So don't worry, I'm not going anywhere, just for today," he said with a small smile. Uraraka rested her head on his shoulder, feeling much better. The weight had been lifted off her, and she was happy that she had let it all out. Izuku didn't do anything. He didn't like Uraraka in a romantic sense, but he would keep to his word, and give her the closure she needed. He would be the Izuku she wanted him to be. Just this once. Just at the door, someone else watched all this go down unnoticed, and softly closed the door behind her, leaning against it with a heavy sigh. Honestly, she was conflicted. One part of her sad for her friend, but another part selfishly relieved that her confession turned out this way. In truth, she always knew it would, but she wasn't someone to fight head-on in matters like this. All her deliberate encouragement, and support, and pushing her friend no confessing how she felt, was all for this moment, and with that, one less person to compete with. It was terrible of her as a friend, but again, she never claimed to be a saint either. It was the truth. She wasn't a person who fought fairly, and she had come to terms with who she was. "Sorry it's come to this, Uraraka, but you left me no other choice. XXXBZZT. Beatst. What time is it?" A sleepy Izuku asked as he put his hand out, stopping the ringing of his alarm clock. He was wrapped up in his blanket, and quite enjoyed the warmth. His phone kept buzzing, which annoyed him, and prompted him to pick it up to see what was causing it to disrupt his peaceful morning. It was a notification. The 24th of December. Date with Nejire, shit, thud. Ow. He groaned in pain, rubbing the back of his head. How could he even forget? And sure enough, Nejire had spammed him with reminders. She seemed more excited about this than he was. That was not the case. He already had whatever he was wearing prepared and hung out the night before, as embarrassing as that sounded. He would never tell Nejire about that though. His mother opened the door to his room, to see him on the floor in a weird position. "Honey, what are you doing?" she asked with a raised eyebrow. "Ah, I fell down, and I thought I might do some yoga while I'm down here," he explained, turning his predicament into a yoga position. Inko chuckled, impressed at how quickly he had come up with that, and left him be. He had a date to get ready for, which he had been telling her about for the past week, and surprise surprise, it was with Nejire. Inko and Masumi watched over the two kids at the park as they ran around playing. They had become very good friends as a result of their two children, and stifled a laugh when Nejire tripped and fell but was caught by Izuku. "Are you okay?" "Why yeah. I'm fine Izuku," the girl said with a small blush. Both moms noticed this little interaction and chuckled. Masumi, being the teaser among them, threw one their way. "You two are so adorable together. You're kind of like a couple, you know," she said with a small smirk. "Mom." Izuku tilted his head in confusion. What did she mean by that? "Couple? Us? Huh?" He laughed at the idea. Nejire frowned and looked away with a pout. "Well, excuse me for not being good enough for you. I hope you find someone else," she said, and stormed off into the bushes. "Hey, wait, did I say something wrong?" Izuku asked, running after her. "You've been getting a lot bolder lately," Inko said. "Am I really? Just give them time. I'm sure Izuku would come around someday," Masumi replied with her usual smirk. It wasn't a secret that she was a fan of the two children ending up as a couple, and you could say she played the role of Cupid sometimes, throwing her little teases to put them on that path. Inko smiled as she closed the door to Izuku's room. "Guess you were right, Masumi." Few hours later, "Oh no, I hope I'm not too early. Wouldn't it seem desperate if I'm here an entire 30 minutes early? I should have listened to Mom and stayed home. Now I'm gonna stick out like a sore thumb." Nejire mentally scolded herself for arriving too early. She was supposed to meet up with Izuku at 10, and this was 9:30. Might as well sit down. She sat down at a small table outside a cafe and got herself a cream puff. She only got one, seeing as she had a date in a few minutes. Next to her table there were some girls who were excitedly talking among themselves. "Wait, who's that? Oh my god, he's so handsome. He's alone. We should go talk to him. What's such a good-looking guy like him doing out here all alone?" Nejire turned to her side, seeing the subject of their discussion. It was Izuku. He was looking rather different from how he looked in school. It was cold, so he was in a brown coat, with black pants and matching black shoes. His hair was tied up in a little man bun, and around his neck a dark red scarf. He looked in her direction, making the girls squeal. "He's looking this way. Yeah, obviously he's looking at me. Know me?" Nejire decided she had enough of these hussies and decided to stick it to them, purely out of spite. "Izuku. Over here," she said, waving to him and getting up. "Wait. Is she his girlfriend? She's so pretty. Damn, he's already taken. They look so good together," one lamented. Nejire clung to Izuku's arm, and shot a menacing glare towards the girls, who yelped in fright. Her eyes gave only one message, which seemed to pass on telepathically to them. "Never. Try this. Again. Did they do something wrong? Your whole aura screams of death," Izuku said with a nervous chuckle. Her demeanor did a complete 180 as she smiled sweetly at him. "No need to worry about it, Izuku. I was just setting things straight." He wasn't too sure about her response, but didn't pry any further. She had her reasons for doing so. He would have planned out their day, but Nejire decided against it, and he understood her reason. She was a very spontaneous person by nature, and went along with whatever came to her mind. He was prepared to be dragged along everywhere, and he was. It was pretty fun though, even if it was a bit tiring. He just wanted to spend time with Nejire. "These are so yummy. Where'd you find this place?" "It was my mom actually. She recommended it. I'm happy you like it." Nejire took a bite out of her crepe and pushed it towards Izuku. "Here, try it. I already have one." "Never mind." He relented, taking a bite of her crepe, because she kept shoving it into his face. His face reddened a bit, thinking that it was an indirect kiss. Should he even be flustered about that? They had already kissed before. He played it off as though it was because of the cold, but she caught on and smirked at him. "Are you embarrassed about something, Izuku?" "And no, I'm not," he answered a bit too quickly. He looked away and she giggled at his reaction. "Hey, There's somewhere I'd like to show you before we head home, she said. She led him by the arm through the streets, picking up speed as they went along. The sun was setting, and the sky was a bright orange. It was a park. He furrowed his brows. It looked strange, yet familiar at the same time. Nejire led him through the trees for about halfway, then surprisingly he took the lead. He began to pick up the pace. The flashes came back again, but this time they were very vivid. He remembered this place, the little park where he used to play as a little kid. The little path in the trees that led to his special place. It was coming back little by little. I come here to be alone. To get away from everything. Looks like the loser found his fortress of solitude, huh? Let's go guys, we don't need Deku anymore. Hey, are you lost too? My name is Nejire. Nejire Hado. Nejire. He whispered, looking down at his reflection. He finally stopped running and looked down at the little stream of water trickling below him. The memories came back, all the years he had forgotten. The tears came pouring out. Nejire had caught up to him, and smiled softly. I'm sorry, he said in between sobs. For what? I'm really sorry. For forgetting you. For forgetting everything. Please forgive me, Nejire. She gently hugged him from behind, comforting him. It's fine. It's fine, Izuku. It's okay. They sat down in front of the stream in a comfortable silence. Izuku spoke up again, his voice no longer warbly with tears. I can't help but feel bad, you know, knowing that you've known this all this time, and how I've been completely oblivious. Nejire wiped the tears from his eyes and smiled at him sweetly. I said it before, and I'll say it again, don't feel bad about it. It was completely out of our control, she said, squeezing his hand softly. I think I get it now. Get what? Our promise. Back then I was confused about it, but now I know what it means. You do, huh? That's good. While it was sad that you forgot, I'm happy that I got the chance to make you fall for me all over again, she said with a smug smile. You just assumed I fell for you? Am I wrong? Izuku laughed a bit. I guess you're right. I'm glad I got to fall in love with you all over again. They both leaned in and kissed softly, then pulled away. Nejire pinched his cheeks. So what now? She asked. Well, we're back together now, and I promise you, I'm not going anywhere again. Yeah, I'm counting on that, Nejire finished. It's already dark. I'll walk you home, he said, helping her up and cleaning the tears in his eyes. Nejire cocked her head in surprise and concern for the boy. Really? You just had a lot hit you all of a sudden though? Yeah. I'm sure of it. After such a long time of being in the dark, having random dreams, it all came back to him. He was whole again, or at least in this case. There were probably some things he didn't remember, but he remembered the most important thing. His promise with the girl he loved. Izuku, when we meet again, let's be together forever. Yeah. We'll be together forever. Summer break, the peak of heat in the country. While it was bothersome, others saw a brighter side to the harsh, relentless sun. Izuku was happily shut in his room, air conditioning on full blast, his lights off, his gaming console functioning perfectly. It was heaven for a nerd like him. He could stay in his room shut in all day, and no one would bother him. Well, that was what he would have said, if not for some people he knew. Few weeks ago they had just been in a war that turned society upside down, and had cost billions in worth of damage. He specifically had fought in a life-and-death battle with Shigaraki, and eventually won out. He really needed the rest time, and playing games in his room was the best way to recover and relax himself. His phone kept buzzing with notifications, and honestly he was pretty scared to check the messages. Izuku could guess what was going down, judging from how frequently his phone would vibrate. It threw him off his game a bit, and he didn't want that. He was in a very serious ranked match in an official competition. Izuku was one of the top 3 best players of that game in the entire country, and right now he was losing ground because of the minor distractions. A message popped on his TV screen from his teammate. Sandman. Dude, what's going on? You've been off pace. He sighed as the game finished. Luckily his team won, albeit barely. He had definitely lost some ground in the rankings, but shouldn't be enough to displace him. He finally decided to check and see what the buzz was about. Huh. A group chat, he said as he saw the notification on his phone screen. Mirio. We'll be at the train station in 20 minutes. Hiya. Sure, sounds good to Maki. Can't I just stay at home? Mirio, Haya, Nejire, others. No, you're coming. Tamaki, middle finger. Mirio. I'm coming over to get you Tamaki. You're not escaping this time. Nejire. Izuku hasn't said anything yet, is he offline? Izuku. I'm here. Nejire. Yay, gimme a sec. Her name popped up on the screen. She had sent him a private message. Nejire. I know you're probably hauled up in your room playing games with Dad, but today you're going out. No ifs, ands, or buts. Get ready and meet us at the train station in 20 minutes. Izuku. I don't even get to have a say? Nejire. Of course not, if you did then you'd never leave your room. Now get ready, Kay. I'm looking forward to spending the day with you, hee. Izuku sighed. It definitely wasn't what he was planning on doing, but he couldn't say no to Nejire. Yes, she always got her way with him. Maybe he was spoiling her too much. Might as well get ready, he said to himself. Since it was a beach day, he didn't put effort at all into what he wore. A simple beach shirt and shorts, a medium-sized backpack and his sun hat and shades. Yeah, he would need them. Maybe a pair for Tamaki too. His mom had already left the house for the day. She said she was visiting a friend of hers the next city away, so he had the day to himself. Izuku decided to walk to the train station to kill off more time. He was sure he'd run into some of his classmates at some point. It was summer break after all. He arrived there just as the last people did, which was the pair of Mirio and Tamaki. Izuku noticed that it was mainly the newly graduated third-year students, which made him slightly nervous. He hadn't talked really to any of them with the exception of the usual four. Yo Midoriya. It's good to see you here, Mirio greeted. Hey, Tamaki also greeted, albeit with a sigh of acceptance. Yeah, you guys didn't really give me much of a choice, Izuku said with a small chuckle. Izuku. Over here. Nejire called. He waved at the girl who happily skipped over to him, immediately snatching his shades. Hey, I was. Never mind. You can have them. Incognito, nice plan, Tamaki said with a small nod. Izuku handed him the other pair, surprising the blue-haired teen. You can have these. I thought you might need them, being in the sun and all. You're a lifesaver, Midoriya, Tamaki said, slipping them on and immediately felt more comfortable. What are we waiting for? Let's go already, Nejire said excitedly. Izuku felt another presence beside him, and turned to see another person standing next to him. The guy was just slightly taller than Izuku, and had bright red hair. I've heard a lot about you, Midoriya. I'm Ken Sabito, he said, extending his hand. Izuku accepted the handshake and smiled a bit. It's nice to meet you, he said politely. You're the first year that swept Nejire off her feet. I can see why, another girl said as she winked at Izuku, who shuddered. It felt weird, very weird, especially because her eyelashes were ridiculously long. The train ride was relatively peaceful, if you could ignore the noise the others were making, talking about what they would do, or how the ocean would feel in heat like this. Izuku got a text from his gaming partner, aka Nejire Hado. Mr. Hado. Heard you guys are heading out to the beach. Have fun, and watch out for Nejire. Also, there's this group of kids who think they're hot stuff. When you're back, let's shove them down a couple pegs. Izuku chuckled. Mr. Hado could definitely be mean when he wanted to, especially to noobs who were getting too cocky for their own good. At some point his game name was Noobslayer. Izuku. Okay. I'll make sure to do that. He almost jumped out of his seat when he felt a hand on his face. It was Nejire, and she pinched his cheek playfully to gain his attention. Whatcha up to, Izuku? She asked. It's nothing much, just game stuff, he explained. Nejire nodded. She knew about his whole secret gaming career and that he was in league with her dad. Actually, he was the one who got Izuku into games, and she wouldn't lie, she got jealous of how well they seemed to get along. It was halted when Izuku had lost his memory, but they were now back to being game partners, like nothing ever changed. We're finally here, one of them said as the train slowed down to a halt. They could already see the white sand, the clear blue water, and the tons of people who also came out to enjoy the beach. Izuku and Tamaki shared the same thought. I really should have stayed home. Let's go, beach babes, some guys exclaimed, rushing off to talk to the ladies. Izuku slipped his shades back on. He had swiped them back from Nejire when she wasn't looking, and surprisingly she didn't notice. Much like Tamaki, he felt less exposed to the sun and gave himself a mental pat on the back. The girls had gone to get changed into their swimsuits, and the boys headed right for the water, seeing as they were already in their swim trunks. Izuku pitched up his portable beach umbrella at a nice spot and laid down a sheet of cloth over the sand. "Ah, you had the same idea as me. I'm not surprised." He hadn't noticed that Tamaki had also pitched up an umbrella to avoid the sunlight and people. He had grown quite the fanbase, which for an introvert like him was terrifying, not being used to the unnecessary amount of attention he was getting. "I wanted to ask, how's being a pro hero been like?" Tamaki looked at the sand, recollecting his experiences so far as a pro hero. One word came to mind. "Troublesome," he said. Izuku stifled his laugh. That was as genuine an answer as you'd get from Tamaki. "Of course you two would be here. Are you allergic to the sun or what? You guys already forced me out here, Haya. The least you could do is take pity on me and let me rest," Tamaki replied with a tired sigh. Izuku agreed with his senpai, though never said it out loud. Hey Izuku. Come here. Oh man. Oh man indeed Izuku. Oh man indeed." The sight of Nejire in a swimsuit was a blessing to the eyes of we mere mortals. Her choice was a pretty simple one, and was much cuter than it was sexy, supposedly. Her beautiful blue hair, which had been unfortunately cut short, blew softly with the gentle wind. Izuku was a fan of what he was seeing. How lucky of a bastard was he to have such an adorable girlfriend. Tamaki gasped in exasperation, and slightly amused betrayal as Izuku got up with newfound energy and stomped towards his girlfriend. Yu giggled at his reaction. "Izuku, what's wrong? You got this intense look in your eyes?" the girl queried, tilting her head as he stopped in front of her. "I love you," he said with a dead straight face. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3, and 4. Then it hit her. What? How can you say that so casually?" she yelled with a huge blush. "I said I love you Nejire," he repeated with the same amount of conviction. "I heard you the first time." She took a few breaths to calm down, though her blush didn't really go away. A small sound from Izuku made her to frown at him. "You're messing with me, aren't you?" Izuku chuckled. "Yeah, I was, but I mean what I said. I really do love you Nejire." "Of course. I know that," she replied, trying to look smug, but it looked more like she was trying unsuccessfully to put up a front. Maybe he should tease her more often. Her reactions were adorable. Yes, he was that down bad, and he would never deny it. The sun was bright and hot as hell, but today he would do whatever his girlfriend wanted today. "Hey, gimme your hat," she said, taking it off him and putting it on herself. Izuku gave a small protest, but relented. She did try to take his glasses though, but he didn't let her, raising it up above her reach. She wasn't as tall as he was, and it was amusing watching her try to get it. Nejire growled and jumped on him, which he wasn't expecting. They tripped and fell down into the water, as the waves washed over them. It was cold, but he felt warm. Nejire had fallen on top of him, and they were pressed up against each other. His face heated up at the close proximity between them, and she noticed this. It was her turn to get back at him for earlier. "How's the view from down there, Izuku?" "It is amazing. I never want to look at anything ever again," he replied almost immediately. Nejire yelped and sat up. Again. How could he just say stuff like that so casually? "You're not making this fun, you know," she said with a small pout. He broke into a laugh, further irking her that her attempts to tease him didn't work. She would get him today, no matter what. "I guess you were right about them." The two of them turned to the side, seeing Mirio and Yu with wide grins. Izuku, to avoid teasing, turned the tables on them, throwing a few words their way. He wasn't expecting it to work, but they both blushed slightly and looked away. He smirked. Jackpot. Yu immediately intervened, not wanting to be the one on the teasing end. "That's enough. You've made your point, Izuku. Have fun you too." Nejire waved at them as she led her boyfriend away from them. "Nejire, where are we going?" Izuku asked as they walked away from the more populated area. "It's a secret," she said with a wink. The area had more trees that covered the sky, and was much cooler than the main beach. He actually preferred this place. She finally stopped and sat down on a log in front of a little creek, patting the spot next to her. Izuku plopped down next to her. "How did you find this place?" "I came here during our first year trip. I wandered around and kinda got lost. Luckily one of the teachers found me, she said with a small laugh. Izuku smiled. It was so much like how she got lost and came into his life. In many ways, he was happy that she got lost that day. If you hadn't gotten lost that day, he whispered. She smiled at the memory, and rested her head on his shoulder, intertwining their fingers. I'm glad I did too, Izu, and I'm glad I met you that day. Izuku turned to face her, and she did same. His hands moved to the side of her face, gently pulling her into a kiss. It felt nice, but wasn't quite there. Not yet. They pulled away and went in again, this time deepening the kiss, but not quite what they wanted again. Almost there. Her tongue traced round the edge of his mouth, pushing past the small barrier and finally crossing over. And boom. Nejire. I think we should stop before we get carried away, Izuku said in between pants. Something in him had been triggered, due to this intimate moment between he and the girl, his feelings for her, and the nature of his anatomy. Why yeah. She agreed, getting off him. They may have gotten a bit too invested in their little moment, and it was very obvious. Her mind was racing with many thoughts. It was the first time she had done something like this, and the first time she had looked at Izuku with something other than love. But what was this feeling? Arousal. Knock knock knock. Izuku twitched in his bed, hearing the sound of his dorm window being tapped rather loudly and impatiently for how late it was in the night. Who or what could that be? A ghost? He sure hoped not. He was surprisingly easy to scare, and Aizawa wouldn't take too kindly to him screaming out like a girl in the middle of the night. Knock knock knock. Okay. The thing wasn't going. He was All Might's successor, the ninth wielder of One for All. He wasn't scared of some dumb ghost. He already had a couple floating around him all day. Huh? Who's that? He asked. Knock knock knock. With a labored sigh he rolled to his side, and sure enough almost screamed seeing who was at the window. He got off his bed and slid the window open. Nejire. What are you doing here? He asked in a harsh whisper. Nejire stepped in through the window and sat down on his bed with a bright smile, completely ignoring his question. He facepalmed. Seriously? Do you know what time it is? And how did you even get past UA security? Simple. I flew here, she replied. But your quirk. It's too flashy to miss at night, he snapped, like he was scolding a child. Nejire pouted at his tone. Izuku's being mean. I came all this way to see you, you know, she said, crossing her arms over her ample chest area. Izuku sighed. Sorry. I'm just surprised how bad security really is. You'd stick out like a sore thumb when it's dark, he said with a small chuckle. Well, to answer your question before. I just wanted to see you. Yeah, it's been a while since I actually got to, you know, since UA resumed and all. Makes sense. Thanks for coming to see me, Izuku said shyly. He was genuinely flattered by the gesture. Nejire had recently moved out of her parents' house, and was now a full-fledged pro-hero. Her life was busy, but despite that, and how tired she may have been, she flew all the way just to see him. Hey, why don't we step outside a little bit? She asked suddenly. Huh? To where? Who knows? We could just go where the wind blows us? That sounds like something you'd do all right, Izuku said with a small smile. Though when they came out the window, he noticed that Nejire didn't use her quirk, and asked why. Well, you said it. I'd stick out like a sore thumb. You'll have to carry me. So that was her game all along. Well played, girlfriend, he thought to himself. You're really clever, aren't you? Just going by what you said. I have no idea what you're talking about, she replied, looking rather smug. Izuku picked her up in his arms and jumped down from the balcony, before taking off into the night sky. The wind was blowing strongly up where they were, making their hair splay all around, but neither cared about that. Flying out like this was more relaxing than he thought it'd be. He felt so at ease, and just turned off his brain. They got up into a bit of a cloud patch, before breaking out above them. The sky was now clear, and the light of the moon as bright as it could be. He smiled looking down. He couldn't see a damn thing. Nejire leapt out of his arms and floated gently beside him. Hey Izuku, do you know how to dance? He furrowed his brows. Not really, I never did take it seriously, he said with a small chuckle. Don't worry. I'll lead the way. It'll be just like when we were little, she said excitedly, taking both his hands and placing them on her. He blushed a bit, but luckily the moon wasn't bright enough to fully illuminate the red hue on his face. Okay, just relax, and let follow my movements, K? He nodded slowly in response. Gently, she lead him through the motions in a slow and deliberate waltz. She giggled. Kinda weird without the music. Yeah. They spun and twirled around in the air, the bright golden shimmers from Nejire's quirk, and the green sparks from Izuku lighting up the air in a dance of their own. One gentle and subtle, the other violent and erratic. Vastly contrasting, but beautifully entangled all the same. Izuku lifted her up into his arms again, pulling her in for a gentle kiss under the moonlight, ending their waltz. You're a fast learner, she said with a smile. You're a great teacher. Nejire took his hand and started off in a certain direction. Izuku followed her, as they broke out back under the clouds and over the beautifully illuminated city. Thousands of lights shone in the night, as if they were stars of their own. I'm kinda tempted to being a nighttime hero now, Izuku admitted. Yeah, but too bad for me. Villains would see me coming a mile away, Nejire joked. They landed on one of the tallest buildings in the city, and sat down on the ledge. Unlike how it was way up, the breeze blew gently, which was a pleasant change. So, how's being a hero like? Izuku asked. Nejire leaned into him and sighed. Her smile dropped a bit, and he noticed. It's tiring, honestly. I never knew heroes went through so much stuff. Did something happen? His girlfriend nodded softly, and was silent for some seconds, then spoke up again. I just realized that I'm still a rookie. I've made quite a few mistakes here and there. Luckily they haven't done any major damage. My head's just always on my friends, you know. I really miss them. Sure, we get to see each other once in a while, but it's nowhere near what I would like. Mirio's always busy, Tamaki's same. Yu is in another part of the country. I can't help but feel like everyone's slowly drifting away because of responsibilities, but again, that's life, right? Izuku listened to her little rant, and now understood why she came to see him. He felt for her. All of her close friends were now going on their own paths, and she was right. Such was life. It's kinda weird seeing you all glum like this, Izuku said after a while, but I get it. Still, it won't change the fact that they're still your friends. That will never change. I will help in my own way though. So whenever you feel lonely, just call. Even if it's in the middle of the night, I'll come to you, okay? Isn't that going to be stressful for you? You have a lot on your plate, Izuku? Nah. You're my girlfriend. It's my duty to keep you happy, even if I have to sneak out of school, he said with a laugh. Okay. But if I notice your grades get lower, it's off, deal? You sound like my mom right now. Deal. Nejire got up feeling a lot better after that talk with Izuku. I'll race you to school, she said, leaping off the edge of the building. Seriously, do you always do this? He yelled, jumping off after her. Nejire kinda lied about it being a race to school. They just glided over the city, and ended up in a ramen shop. The elderly man beamed at the girl as she pushed past the curtains with Izuku walking in behind her. Hey old man Tucci, she greeted. Nejire-chan. It's good to see you. Oh, and I see you brought a guest, he said, looking back at Izuku, who greeted him. Ah, so you're the Izuku Midoriya. I must thank you personally for what you did for all of us back then. Never did get to see you in person. You're pretty elusive, you know, the man said with a laugh. Nejire sat down and patted the spot next to her. Izuku also sat down, feeling a bit shy that the man recognized him. He wasn't yet used to all the attention he had been getting lately, and generally avoided it. Luckily he was friends with both Shoto and Bakugo, the latter being one to grab attention. Nejire, you'll be getting the usual right, and what will young Midoriya be getting? I'll get the same as her, Izuku replied. Tucci gave him a slightly worried look. That's not really advisable, young man. Nejire-chan over here may not look like it, but she's a black hole. Most people would enter a food coma if they are what she does. Izuku shuddered at the thought. Oh okay, then just scale it down. Comin' right up. A thought hit him, and he checked his phone for a certain picture. Wait. He looked back at Tucci, who gave him a knowing smile. I know what you're thinking, kid. Coincidences can be scary, he said with a wink. Now wait. This was the same Tucci from Naru. Here's your ramen, and the Nejire special, he declared, setting Izuku's bowl in front of him, and with great skill set Nejire's down for her. Izuku's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets at the obscene amount of food she had gotten. Tucci wasn't joking about what he said. He had even completely forgotten about the possible universe-jumping ramen chef. It was delicious, and he was done before he knew it. Scarily enough, so was his girlfriend. He didn't know where all that food even went to. I'm full," she said, arching backwards, and Izuku looked away. "Never mind that. Because we have a special guest. Today's meal is on the house," Tucci said with a small smile. "Really? Thanks," Nejire said happily. "Thank you. I'll be sure to drop by again," Izuku said, though with less energy than his girlfriend. "I'll be waiting for Ya Midoriya." He watched the both of them fly off with a content smile. As a chef, nothing gave him more satisfaction than watching people scarf down his meals. It reminded him of a certain knucklehead back wherever. "Hey Dad. You're smiling like a creep," a female voice said coming out from the back. "I just had a very special customer Iyame." The couple had reached Ua, and snuck back into Izuku's room. It didn't take long for the fatigue to catch up to them, and they fell asleep. Nejire cuddled comfortable with her boyfriend, and forgetting that she was no longer a student. Knock knock knock. "Midoriya. Open up." Both of them flew out of the bed in a panic. It was morning already. "Crap." Nejire yelped, diving behind the bed as Iida pushed open the door. "Good morning Iida. Sorry, I was kinda lost in thought." "No worries. Actually Mr. Aizawa was doing a checkup on each student's room to see if we're keeping the place intact. He's just a few doors away," Iida said, leaving. "Just great. What kind of shitty luck was this?" Bakugo had been passing his door, having been woken up by Iida too, and was grumbling when he spotted a mop of blue hair behind Izuku. Izuku facepalmed. Nejire was terrible at hiding. So how would he explain this to his teacher? He had a panicked look on his face, and as Aizawa made his way towards his room he had already made up his excuse. Boom. "Who the fuck left a Lego out here?" Bakugo suddenly yelled, releasing an explosion from his palms to get his teacher's attention, and it worked. Aizawa immediately spun round to glare at him, and the blonde looked over at her as if screaming for her to leave, which was Nejire's cue to get out. She jumped out the window and took off faster than the eye could see. "What was that about, Bakugo?" Aizawa asked with a frown. "I stepped on a Lego. That doesn't give you the right to use your quirk, and in the dorms no less. I won't warn you again," the man said, turning back to Izuku's room. The green-haired boy sighed in relief, and looked back at his classmate, who looked back and walked away. "I owe you one. Another year, another winter break." It was now approaching Christmas again, and would mark a whole year since Izuku and Nejire had started dating. He was now looking forward to his final year at UA, and graduating to being a full-fledged pro hero. By now most of his classmates were already either sidekicks, or already had a standing in the hero rankings. He was one of such, but wanted to really get out there and shoot up the ladder. He couldn't really say he was aiming for number one. His original goal had already been crossed off the list. He had also defeated All for One, so honestly, he didn't really have much to do anymore, but it didn't stop him from being excited about it. He nearly jumped at the commotion downstairs, and wondered what on earth was going on. It sounded like Kirishima, but what could make him yell like that? Well, a lot, but usually not that loud. "I guess I'll see what's up for myself." He came out of his room down to the common area, and found out what the source of all the commotion was about. Apparently, Bakugo and Uraraka started dating, or that was what Kirishima accused them of, claiming he saw them walk into the dorms holding hands in the middle of his morning workout. Bakugo didn't exactly help the situation. Unlike Uraraka, he wasn't able to play it off, and was red-faced and screaming at the redhead, trying to look intimidating, but didn't quite hit the mark. He just confirmed their suspicions, if anything. Uraraka facepalmed. "Well, cat's out of the bag now." The blonde turned and locked eyes with Izuku, who gave him a small smirk. He immediately turned his attention to him, glaring at him. "Don't mess with me, Izuku, and don't tell Mom about this," he said, the latter part in a lower tone. "Wouldn't dream of it," Izuku replied, raising his hands up in submission. Bakugo muttered something to himself and left, face in his hands. "Congratulations, Uraraka. I'm happy for you," Izuku said to his female friend. "Thanks. Well, if you'll excuse me. I was in the middle of sleeping. Later," he said, heading back up to his room, leaving his classmates to do whatever it is they were doing in the first place. XXX. So let me get this straight. You're writing your property in my name? Isn't that a bit too much? A confused Izuku asked. All Might smiled and shook his head. It is something I've been working on for quite some time, young Midoriya. I already made my mind a while ago, so yes, I've thought it through. I don't have any family, or even a close relative that I know of, and you're the closest thing to family to me, the man admitted. Izuku looked down. He was happy at what All Might said, but still, was he really planning on doing all that? Also, there's something else I'd like you to know. All Might had been nervous about many things before, but right now, he felt more nervous than all those times combined. He and Izuku sat across each other in his office, looking at each other. The boy's face showed no emotions as he stared at his teacher. Finally he spoke up. So, you and my mom, he began. The former pro could only nod and look down shyly. Izuku's facial expression didn't help matters in the slightest. Yes. I was going to tell you, but she decided against it. Anyone else knows about this? Izuku asked. All Might nodded. Well, yes. Mrs. Hado is also aware of this. Izuku nodded and pinched the bridge of his nose. This was a lot to take in, not that he was mad or anything. If anything, he was happy for them, both of them. All Might never had anyone in his life, and his own father was a no-show. The man was more of a father to him than his biological one ever was. I assume this is a lot to take in for you. I understand if you feel disturbed, All Might said. No, I don't. Actually, I'm happy for you too. I'm just baffled at why my mom decided to hide it from me. He could understand where the boy was coming from, and would feel the same way if he was in his shoes. It's fine. Again, I'm happy for you too, but I'll ask one thing. What is it? My mom has been a huge part of my life. She's given me everything, and she's very precious to me. Please take care of her and make her happy. All Might smiled and nodded. I give you my word. XXX. Eri dear. Come down on, we'll be late, Inko yelled from outside. I'm coming. The girl yelled back, rushing out of the house. It was Christmas again, and they were heading over to the Hados for a Christmas party. Isn't this a bit much, even for the cold? Toshinori asked with a raised eyebrow. Eri shook her head. I'm really cold, my nose is all red, see. The man chuckled and started the car, driving off. Izuku was already there, having stayed over the night before at Yamada's request. The previous day marked exactly a year since Izuku and Nejire started dating, and the two had been out basically the entire day doing couple stuff. They finally arrived at their destination, and got out of the car. Masumi was already waiting for them at the door. Eri ran up to the woman, leaping into her arms. Auntie Masumi. Eri, my dear, how are you? The woman greeted back, wrapping her arms around the girl in a hug. Toshinori parked the car properly and followed them into the house. Toshinori. It's good to see you again. Still feels weird to address you like this, Yamada admitted with a small laugh. Yeah, I'm still getting used to it. Sei was still in his room. Izuku and Nejire had yet to arrive. Where were they to begin with? Auntie Masumi, can I have a cookie? Eri asked, seeing the steaming pile of baked treats on the table. Of course. Come with me, dear. When I asked you said no, Yamada protested, comically offended at the favorable treatment the little girl was receiving from his wife. Masumi shot him a small glare. That's because you've been stuffing yourself too much lately. You'll eat them all. Who man? Hope you don't have to deal with this, Toshinori. It's a hassle. The man said with a sigh. Toshinori chuckled at his friend's words. Hey everyone. We're here. Nejire announced as she and Izuku walked into the house. The both of them were grinning like idiots. God knows what they've been up to. The adults regarded them with amusement. You two finally decided to show up, huh? Sorry about that. We kinda got carried away, Izuku apologized, scratching the back of his head. Masumi smirked. While I think it's too early for me to have grandchildren, I won't object. Everyone coughed at the implication, and Eri looked confused. Are Izuku and Nejire gonna make babies? She asked innocently. Oh my. Here's your cookie, Eri. Inko cut in, desperately trying to change the topic to something else. Eri didn't need to know what that meant. Mom. You're not subtle at all. Nejire scolded. I can't help it. It's a bad habit of mine, though I'd say you're not much different than I am. Nejire couldn't disagree. She was just as unsubtle as her mother could be, especially with Izuku. She basically threw herself at him now that she looked back at it. Well, she wasn't complaining. With her boyfriend, being direct and aggressive was the best approach, or else he'd probably be with someone else by now. Okay, she should abandon such thoughts. Say, oh, that boy. He knows I'll be looking for him, Masumi grumbled. Don't worry. I'll go get him, Izuku said, getting up and heading for the boys' room. It was cold outside, but inside the house, there was a warmth that could only be created when people who cared about each other gathered together. Toshinori and Yamada in their own discussions, with the former telling some stories from his hero days, Inko and Masumi spoiling Eri Rotten, Izuku and Sei playing games on the console. Nejire smiled to herself. Everyone looked so happy right now. No worries about what had happened, or what would happen. They were just living in the moment. Maybe truly, Christmas magic was real. She had found herself outside, looking on into the snowy night sky, not noticing another person who had followed her. What are you doing out here? She smiled on hearing the familiar voice. It was Izuku, who had noticed her go outside. I was just thinking, how everyone inside looks so happy. No one's worried about what happened, or what's going to come. I've always loved living in the moment, so it's refreshing to see others doing it for a change, she said with a warm smile. You're right. When you're with the right people, all you can do is just have a good time. That's the beauty of having a family, I think. You sound like some middle-aged dad right now. Izuku laughed at the joke, and pulled her in for a kiss, which she reciprocated. They remained like that for a few minutes, lost in each other's warmth. Izuku. I love you, Nejire said with a small blush. It's cute how saying that still makes you red, he replied with a small smirk. She gave a light protest at his response. It wasn't fair of him to tease her like that. I've said this more times than I can count, and I'll say it again. I love you too, Nejire, and I always will. And look forward to spending more time with you. Nejire's smile brightened. Next Christmas too? He nodded. And the next one? And the next one too? All the Christmases, and everything else. We'll celebrate them together. Nejire then said something he wasn't expecting. Even when we have kids. Sure. It'll be way more rowdy, but hey, I'm not complaining. They kissed again. This time he picked her up and twirled her around, something that she really liked. Dude. Another voice came in. It was Sei, who made a gagging face. What are you doing here, Sei? Nejire asked. Izuku was taking too long, so I came to get him. It's those damned kids again, he said. Izuku immediately got serious and turned to his girlfriend. She smiled, gave him her permission. Then Sei opened his mouth. Finally, we can go crush those losers. Hey, at least be grateful, Nejire scolded. No. He's your boyfriend. You get to spend more time with him anyways. Let's go, Izuku. Sei snapped back. Nejire pouted and looked away. Izuku laughed at their interaction. Merry Christmas, Nejire, he said as he left with Sei. On second thought. Hey, wait up, I'm coming too. Yay. It's finally time. A very excited Nejire yelled as she basically flew out of her bed and into the air, then hunched over and groaned slightly in discomfort. No, she wasn't getting old, at least she hoped that wasn't the case. It had been some weeks since Izuku started to visit her, unbeknownst to everyone else. Their late-night dates were something she really enjoyed, and well, last night, they did get carried away, and yeah, she was pretty sore. Her face was splashed with a small tint of red remembering what happened. Her window was slightly open, which meant that he had just recently left. She never thought Izuku had that side to him, and it was pretty hot. Oh shoo, you perverted thoughts, she mentally screamed, shifting her excitement back to what made her jump up earlier. What was she so excited about? Her boyfriend was finally graduating, and would soon become a pro hero. Who was she kidding? The real reason she was happy was because they'd no longer have to keep their relationship under the radar. Seeing all those girls shamelessly flirt with him, or scream whenever he did something admittedly cool, made her quirk act up. In short, she hated it. Nejire wasn't one you'd associate with such grudges, but she did have her moments of spite here and there, where she slipped up and acted on impulse. Why haven't they replied me? She exclaimed as the messages she had sent to her parents had been delivered, but not replied to. Her phone buzzed just a few seconds before she would start ranting. It was them. Mom. We're getting ready. Don't worry, just meet up as we planned. Dad. There you go. You made your mother yell at me for sleeping in. You owe me for this. She giggled at her dad's message. He probably played way too many matches last night and passed out with the controller in his hands, not the first time either. Better go get ready then, she said with a smile, but then heard a huge crash outside, and then a roar. What the heck is going on out here? She screamed, looking on at an ongoing fight between a team of heroes and a giant villain. In the process of fighting, they had knocked the villain over, and he crashed into a building. Poor people, but it managed to piss off Nejire. Firstly, she would probably have to deal with this. Second, she would also have to deal with the sounds of reconstruction, and that was not okay, especially when she would come back tired and looking for peace and quiet. Thirdly, and most importantly, she didn't want to be late for Izuku's graduation. Hey! She yelled out in frustration. Nejire-chan. We could use some help here. He's been like this for a few hours now, one of the heroes said from below. Nejire pinched the bridge of her nose and sighed. You guys should get clear of here. Now. The tone in her voice left no room for argument, and they did as they were told. She flew at the villain, and charged up a full power blast, in a way that Shoto or Endeavor would use their famous Flashfire Fist. The golden beams of energy spun violently around her fist, and then dispersed through the villain's body as she made contact. The force immediately took him out, leaving his face caved in and sizzling. Her own move, which she named after one of Izuku's. Nejire Smash. The other hero's sweat dropped at the excessive use of force. She could have afforded to tone it down a little, couldn't she? Well, on the bright side, the villain was down and out. Thank you for the help. We'll handle it from here. Nejire waved them and flew back towards her apartment, grumbling all the way there. Stupid villains didn't know when to catch a freaking break. At least she relieved some stress caving his face in. Yeah. That would teach him to mess with her day. She got back, still in her pajamas in fact, and rushed straight for the shower to get ready. The alarm clock beside her table showed 8:32. She had just over an hour to get ready, and yes, it seemed like it was an excessive amount of time, but that would be true for guys who could get perfectly ready and raring to go in as little as 5 minutes. How they did that she had no idea, but she'd like to learn that trick. It was a big day at UA, again. The current set of third years were officially graduating, and were now to be led into the world as the new generation of heroes. Class 3A, B, and the general course students were all ready for the day. You could see that they were definitely going to celebrate this event well. Girls dressed up and looking spectacular, the guys looking immaculate in their sharp-looking suits. Izuku had yet to arrive, which was a slight problem, because he would be the one to give a goodwill speech in the event. Aizawa sighed. Izuku always did this, maybe he was picking up on some of his traits when he was a student. That nerd better not be late. Bakugo growled out, small explosions popping from his palms. He never did outgrow that little quirk of his. The door opened and Izuku came in with an apologetic look on his face. Sorry I'm late. Something urgent came up. Don't even start, you overslept didn't you? The blonde asked with a tick mark appearing on his forehead. Okay. You caught me, Izuku admitted with a chuckle. The dark circles around his eyes were very obvious, but it somehow just added to his appeal. His long hair was slicked back in a man bun, which had recently been his go-to hairstyle. His black tuxedo fit him perfectly, with a matching shirt, and a dark green tie. The tired look also gave him that Aizawa appearance, which was definitely working for him. Looking sharp Midoriya, Kirishima commented. Yeah. Do you want to ruin this day for us? You'll steal all the girls with that face of yours? Mineta roared in outrage. Today was a bittersweet celebration. They would all be going off on their own paths, some near, some far, and some far away. Mineta had been sent an offer from a rescue hero agency way out in France, and sure he accepted immediately, spouting something about the gods of romance shining on him at last. They'd miss his antics, that was for sure. Others like Tokiyami and Shoto were going to take over the agencies where they had been working. Bakugo as expected was flying solo, saying he'd fly through the hero rankings in no time. They were waiting to be called out, and their friends and families were all on the other side waiting for them. Aizawa cleared his throat, gaining their attention. First off, congratulations to each and every one of you here. These last 3 years have been, simply put, hell for me. It earned him a small wave of laughter, then he continued with an amused look in his eyes. Though, I didn't say it was a bad hell. I've watched all of you grow into fine young heroes, and I and the other teachers taught you all we know. Now it's up to you to put that into practice. Work hard, don't slack off and fall behind. I'll be keeping very close tabs on all your progress. I don't think I should tell you to go out there and prove yourselves, because you've already done that. What I will say is, go out there, and be the best heroes you can be. I am proud to have taught you, and I look forward to working with you from now on. Sensei. We won't disappoint you. We'll go plus ultra, Kirishima yelled, crying, manly tears, as he dubbed it. Then get out of here. They're all waiting on you. He was proud of them, and he would never admit it out loud, but he would miss them and the chaos that was associated with the class. Take care, problem children. Where the hell are they? Do they always have to make a show? Monoma growled in annoyance. Oh shush. They're here. Class 3A came out to meet their classmates, and finally the third years had all gathered. Nezu came up to the podium and began to address them. I would like to welcome you to this event, where we celebrate another batch of promising young heroes. Heroes who have fought and gone through not only the challenges that UA had set in front of them, but also the real world, and came out on top. It is my utmost pleasure to congratulate all of you, and to thank you for your contributions to society. I firmly believe that you will make the world a better place as you go out. With that aside, let the UA graduation ceremony begin. There was a round of applause following Nezu's little speech. UA didn't waste time with many things, and this was one of them. One by one the students walked up to collect their diplomas. Of course some made a show of it, like Bakugo and Monoma, which made the crowd burst into laughter. Izuku came up to Nezu, who smiled at him. You've grown up to be a fine pillar, Izuku. We'll be relying on you a lot more from now on. I won't disappoint, sir, the boy replied, bowing at taking his diploma. He was then ushered to the podium for his farewell speech. Truth be told, he completely forgot his lines, but it didn't matter. He would speak from the heart. He cringed as there were loud cheers from his fans in the junior classes who had been in attendance. Izuku-senpai, we love you, please don't go, marry me. He scratched his head and looked on awkwardly for a few moments as they were being quieted down by the teachers. Phew. He exhaled. As the principal basically said most of it, I would like to add my little encouragement to it. We all know what happened, and how far we've come since then. I just want to encourage everyone to keep fighting for a better world. It hasn't been easy rebuilding, even now, but that's why we should all work together. I would also like to congratulate my classmates, we made it, despite everything. And finally, to all our teachers, and the staff at UA, thank you. Our journey would not have been possible without you. Another wave of applause as he left the stage, almost collapsing from mental fatigue as soon as he was out of sight, but someone caught his weight. You're lucky you're not heavy, or I'd have let you hit the floor. Thanks for the save, Nejire, he said with a sigh. For someone like him, that was extremely draining, and he felt like he'd melt under all the eye contact and lights. You're gonna have to get used to it, you know. This is what heroes go through all the time. Izuku sighed again. Maybe he could call it a day and retire right here right now. Unfortunately, that wouldn't be possible. Come on, you big baby. Let's go, everyone's waiting for you, she said, after he had rested for a few minutes. Outside, the students were busy, taking pictures with their families and their friends, or messing around one last time. Mineta and Kaminari had pulled one last prank, adding their initials on the statue of Monoma, and said boy didn't take too kindly to that. You ruined my legacy. Why did they have to be in the fucking eyes? He yelled, chasing them. It was kind of an overreaction. Cementos could easily fix that problem. The couple walked to where their families were waiting for them. Izuku blushed a bit, but decided it was time to let everyone know, and also to put an end to him being hounded left and right by juniors. Slowly and shyly, he took his girlfriend's hand. Nejire was surprised, but smiled and firmly grabbed onto his, intertwining their fingers together. It did what it was supposed to do. Izuku was no longer on the market. Nejire shot on of the girl's suck it bitch smirk and looked away, not knowing her boyfriend had seen that. You're quite sadistic, aren't you? He asked. Nejire giggled. I have no idea what you're talking about, she denied. The end. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Now we will see you in the next video.